So welcome everyone to our new workshop today, Keys to Effective CBT, Holding Patients Accountable While Building Warmth and Connection. And I'll be presenting today alongside my dear friend and colleague, Mike Christensen. And I wanted to say a few things on this slide. One is, for those of you who are wondering, why is David not here? Because we usually do these workshops with David. I want to make sure everybody knows David's doing great. He's just super busy with his app, and he'll be back teaching with us again in February, working on lots of projects. So I know sometimes people, are worried about David's absence, but he's doing great. And I also wanted to say I'm super excited about the opportunity to teach with Mike. Mike, you will find today, if you don't already know Mike, but Mike is a fantastic clinician, a warm human being, and an extremely clear and helpful teacher. So I'm really excited to be teaching a lot of David's material with Mike today. We have
Jill.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's really kind of a cool opportunity because you've taught a ton with David, and then I've taught a fair bit with him. And so for us to kind of combine forces feels really, really fun. Although we'll gladly welcome David back in the future.
Absolutely. So we'll just have a few introductory slides, and then we'll really get into the heart of it today. So the mission here at Feeling Good Institute, just to kind of let you know who we are and where we're coming from, our goal is to alleviate suffering by nurturing elite therapists. So our goal is to help patients, but really to help patients by training and supporting therapists and doing high quality CBT. So we started back in 2013 by a couple of us mentored by Dr. David Burns at Stanford University. And we work hard to train and certify therapists in the processes of effective therapy. We'll talk to you about them on an upcoming slide, but we focus on measurement, empathy, increasing motivation, and reducing resistance. And we focus on the methods of cognitive behavioral therapy. All of our therapists are really highly skilled and vetted therapists and trainers. We focus in weekly training. All of our therapists get together and consult on cases and use deliberate practice to improve our skills kind of week over week. And we offer video-based therapy across the US and Canada, and in-person treatment centers in New York, Silicon Valley, where I am, Canada, where Mike is, and Israel. We offer outpatient therapy. We offer intensive therapy where people fly in from out of town or drive in from out of town to visit us and engage in many hours of therapy per day, many days a week, in order to get over their suffering faster and more efficiently. And we offer low-fee options as well. I won't go through all the people on this slide, but this is our leadership team. I also want to say thank you today. The way that Mike and I are teaching, we're going to be doing a lot of didactic teaching. We're going to be doing demonstrations. We're going to be using polls and trying to engage you, but really our favorite way of teaching and your best way of learning is practicing, and we wouldn't be able to practice without our helpers and small group leaders. So you'll be sent into practice groups 2 different times throughout the day today, and you'll have leaders that will be facilitating your practice of the skills that you're learning. And I also want to say a big thank you to LJ Davis, who is our Director of Online Experience. He's taking care of everything behind the scenes so that Mike and I can focus on teaching. So thank you, LJ. And Richard Lamb is here with us helping with tech support. So if you have issues with your accessing the slides or with Zoom or Talent LMS, you can send a chat in the chat box to Richard and he'll be there to help you. Daniel Herman will be behind the scenes assigning you into breakout groups. If you drop off and suddenly are no longer in your group, you'll land back in the main room, and Daniel will make sure you get to where you need to go. Throughout the day, we will also be fielding questions from you. So if you have questions, we want you to send them in your chat box to Todd daily. So Todd will be relaying your questions to us. So any questions you have, enter them in the chat box to Todd. And then Zane is going to be helping us because there'll be times where we'll be asking you for your participation. We'll ask you, what would you say? What would you do? And then you're going to type your answer to Zane. So think questions to Todd and kind of answers to Zane, and we'll remind you that throughout the day. But all these people are here really to make this workshop much more interactive so that we can connect with you and not just kind of talk at you. We'll also be
jump in real quick. Richard is not here yet, so if people have those tech questions, they can chat me instead.
Okay, thank you, LJ. And Richard may be responding to people via email and trying to get them in and things like that. So hopefully he'll be on with us soon. We'll be recording, or we already are recording the workshop today so that we can make it available to those of you who registered who may or may not be with us, and we'll put it on the workshop page. So if you don't want to be seen in that video, that's very easy. You can just not speak up in the large group or not enable your video. We won't be recording your breakout groups. And then I want to say this, and I'll say it again at the end of the day, but the majority of you are here. So in order to get your continuing education credit, you need to be present for the whole day. So that means you signed in with your attendance on the workshop page, which you saw before the Zoom link. You're here the whole day. You're in your breakout groups. You're here till the end. And at the end, actually, we'll put in the chat box the link to complete the CE survey. That will make it really easy for you. You don't have to log back into the workshop page. So we'll put the link in the chat box, and you'll click that link and you'll fill out your CE survey right at the end of the day, 5 of 1. And then you'll be emailed your CE certificate. And we can't accept late submissions. So if you text me or email me and tell me a week from now that you were here, but you didn't fill out the survey, unfortunately, we won't be able to give you CE credit. So please make sure you fill out the CE survey right at the end of the workshop today so that you can get credit. And I won't go into too much detail here. This is really just to give you a sense. We'll be taking a break around 10:50. We'll be teaching, we'll be demonstrating. You'll have opportunities for breakout practice and giving us feedback throughout the day. And at the end of the day, we'll also have some time for Q&A again and wrap up. And this is sort of an approximate time. We'll do the best we can to stay on track. So let's kind of shift gears. And now that we got all of that stuff out of the way, we can get into the heart of what we're going to be teaching today. I actually first just want to say kind of cheers to all of you for showing up and wanting to learn about holding yourself and your patients accountable. This is not the sexiest topic. It's not, how to cure trichotillomania in 5 minutes or how to overcome social anxiety in 2 hours. This is really, the kind of relentless act of keeping your patients on track in therapy and holding yourself accountable to doing really effective therapy. So I appreciate that those of you who are here are really wanting to learn and work hard. So what we'll be talking to you about today is really this kind of third bullet, the A, dealing with resistance. But I just want to teach you briefly about the framework that we're coming from. So Mike and I do what's called Team CBT, and that's a framework for doing therapy that's been developed by David Burns. And it's really based on what we know to be most effective, the sort of processes of therapy. So we use testing or measurement at all of our sessions with all of our patients in order to track their symptoms, make sure that they're actually getting better and that they're improving over time, to kind of course correct if they're not, and also to check in with them at the end of the session to see how the session went for them, and to address empathy failures or ruptures throughout therapy. We also teach and train and use empathy, which means that we're connecting with all of our patients. We're not just kind of rushing in and trying to change them. We're really spending time at the beginning and throughout our sessions connecting with our patients. The third bullet here is the A, which it stands for assessment of resistance, which is way more than assessing. It's really addressing resistance, thinking through with our patients what are good reasons not to change, what are the values of the symptoms that they have, and specifically today, it's really evaluating, are our patients willing to do the work they need to do in order to change, and kind of why and why not. And bringing resistance to conscious awareness so that we can really help our patients to melt it away. And then they can engage in the methods of therapy far more effectively once we've addressed and sort of reduced resistance. And so we're going to be focusing a lot today, again, on accountability, which is kind of a variation or a nuance of resistance. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike here.
Whenever I attend a workshop or a course, my hope is that I'll be able to learn something so that I can improve or grow, and it'll address some challenge that I'm having. And so today we want you to think about, what is the challenge that we're hoping to address today? I'm going to launch a poll and ask yourself the question, do you have patients or clients who don't do their homework, show up or late or missed sessions or hesitant fill-up measures, reluctant to get to work in sessions, and check all that apply. I'm not going to think of some of my best patients or clients or my worst ones, but on the whole, do you have patients who fit any of these categories? And I'll give you just 15, 20 seconds to fill that out. All right, looks like we've got already 95% of the people. I'm just going to close the poll. This is very affirming, in a sense, a bit of a relief for me, because I've certainly had all of these, and it seems like the majority of you have had a lot of them as well. 95% have had patients or clients who don't do their homework. 57 show up late, 56% are hesitant to fill out measures, and 68 are reluctant to get to work. And we're hoping to address each of these in some measure today. And so we ask ourselves, why should we hold our patients accountable? What would be the purpose of holding our patients accountable? Jill, if you can go to the next slide. And the first thing is, we know it leads to better outcomes. If patients are aware of what they need to do and then actually do it, then the outcomes are better. It also really builds trust with clear expectations. It's a respectful way of delivering therapy, which leads to less frustration for the patient and less frustration for us, burnout for therapists. When you're stuck with patients, I know for me, it's with the ones that I get a little bit, where am I going? That seems like we're in the mud here. It can be draining and exhausting. The fifth thing is it's very empowering for the patient. It's giving them a sense that you believe in them when we set these clear expectations and that we hold them accountable. And then finally, it protects patients from disappointment. We don't want to set them up with the expectation we can deliver something that we can't if we're not holding them accountable. And so the last thing I want to do is be the next therapist that didn't work for them. I want to be the one that sets them up for success. And so it's a few keys that we lean on in order to address these. The first is, we want to start early with setting expectations. We're going to do a little bit of practice with that, even in our consultation. The 15-minute, we call it our 15-minute phone, or I do video consultation. I start then. We want to provide a sense of hope. You're not just saying, I'm demanding and here's what you have to do, but you want to give some opportunity for them to think about what the process will be like, and what the outcome will be like, and what you have to offer them, and be clear about what we have to offer them. I want to be clear about what we expect from them. You're going to be working together as a team, so you're really setting the ground rules. And at the same time, and I think this one is important, we want to be flexible in the sense of knowing what the patient's capacity is. You're not going to set them up with something that they can't actually do. I worked with a client at one time who had a brain injury due to a car accident. And while I require people to fill out a mood survey before and after every session, in the vast majority, I send it to them ahead of time or give it to them before they come into the office. This person had a difficult time kind of reading and comprehending. That was part of the challenge. And so I had to be a bit flexible on how we delivered that form. So we want to keep in mind what the patient's capacity is and set those expectations based on what they can handle. And then finally, we want to make sure we're asking for commitment while giving the patient full agency to choose whether or not they're going to engage in the process. We want to give them permission to say no, but not feel bad about it, to feel actually good about saying yes or no in regards to what we're going to have them offer. Jill, anything you wanted to kind of add or clarify there?
Yeah, no, only, well, just about the keeping in mind the patient's capacity. You'll see today, as Mike said, that we're very much trying to hold our patients accountable and hold ourselves accountable. And so you'll be practicing and we'll be demonstrating for you how you kind of say, these are the things that you'll need to do in order to recover. And these things are kind of non-negotiable, right? That's the way we think about it. But I think this second to last bullet here is really important. I told Mike and I met on Sunday to sort of finalize our slides. And I said, I actually attended a workshop on Saturday where I was learning about neurodiversity in CBT. And one of the things that I was learning about was being flexible, right? That certain patients, for example, I use exposure therapy with, pretty much all of my patients who struggle with anxiety. And yet some patients with autism will need to approach anxious situations differently. Exposure therapy could actually be overwhelming and flooding for them in a way that's different for a neurotypical patient. And so our point here was really just to share with those of you who are worried that we're rigid and inflexible, that while we are very much wanting to hold our patients accountable, we also realize that patients are individuals and we do want to pay attention to what they, can and can't actually do. So I think that was it.
Yeah, appreciate that Jill. One of the first obstacles that we want to address is that patients don't realize what it will take to get better. Oftentimes patients or clients will come into therapy with an expectation, and they may have kind of this Hollywood idea. They've watched a movie and suddenly somebody just talked and had this great realization, and they didn't see any of the work that the clients or patients are doing in between. And so we want to be really clear about what it's going to take to get better. And I set this up very early, even in my 15-minute consultation, which is primarily about connecting and getting a bit of a sense of what they're hoping for. But before I wrap up the consultation, I let them know how I work. I say I'm kind of demanding, and I remember having this gentleman call me, and he started off by saying, "Oh, I'm so excited to meet you. I know you're the therapist for me." And that felt kind of nice. He'd listened to some podcasts and some things that I'd done with David. And as we began to talk, and he told me a bit of his background, his story. And one of the questions I ask is, have you seen other therapists before? Have you done any counseling before? I want to get a sense of what did work for them if they did some work, or what didn't work. And he said, "Oh, I've seen numerous counselors and a number of psychiatrists, and I've actually been kicked out of a couple of treatment centers, and I have this diagnosis, and but I know you're the guy for me." and I thought, oh,
no pressure.
No pressure, right? And I thought, I want to be really clear with this gentleman. I really liked him, and I thought it would be really kind of fun to work with him, because we seem to be connecting very well. But at the same time, I was a bit nervous that there's probably some pretty remarkable people that worked with him over the years that could not deliver for him. And I didn't want to set him up with an expectation that I could deliver something that I couldn't. And so I said to him, my sense is that you've been a little bit set up in the past, and people haven't been entirely clear with you and maybe couldn't deliver what they promised. And that wouldn't be fair to you. And so I don't want to do that. So I'm actually going to be pretty demanding right now and tell you what it will require before we would start working together. And I said, because he talked about a lot of hopelessness and some other dynamics. And I said, so what I want you to do is, you told me you've already bought the book Feeling Great. And I want you to read it completely and do all the exercises in it. And I'm also going to send you something called the Anti-Hopelessness Memo, which is a 22-page kind of homework assignment. And I want you to complete it in entirety with all the exercises done. And once you have that done, then contact me and we'll look at, where you might be stuck. And I can help you. So now, one of the drawbacks of this approach is, if you do all this work, you may recover and not need to see me, because you may discover that you find that to the tools you needed. And I said, and then I'd love to work with you. I think it would be great. But until you do that, I don't know how to help you without that done. Now, that can seem pretty extreme, pretty demanding. But his response to me was, "Thank you so much for being honest with me and being real and believing in me." And now, I imagine some of you are thinking, now I'm going to tell a story about how he did the work, and then we came back and we did this great work together, and he had this recovery in 2 or 3 sessions. But the truth of the matter is, I never heard from him again. And to me, that's actually successful therapy, because I didn't become the next therapist that disappointed him. And whether he did the work and succeeded in it and got the recovery he needed, he may have, and that would be wonderful. That would be great. But if he didn't, at the very least, I didn't contribute to his hopelessness by, setting him up with something that I couldn't deliver. And so we want to be really clear about what it takes. And I start in the 15-minute consultation.
I love that story, Mike. And I also love, Mike and I talked about how oftentimes we, share success stories, and we feel like it's really important throughout the day today for you to realize that it's actually a success if a patient realizes that they don't want to do the work and don't want to be in therapy, because it's a success from the perspective of the alternative would have been some sort of watered down, diluted, push-pull, resistant therapist burnout therapy, right? And so we want to help patients to be really engaged and making progress in therapy, or we want to give them permission to say, it's not the right time for me, or I don't want to do the work, and to feel, actually okay about that, right? And so it's ultimately, we feel like holding patients accountable and holding ourselves accountable is just like the deepest form of empathy and respect that we can really offer our patients. So let's walk you through the first piece we're going to be teaching and demonstrating and practicing today is how to set expectations early. And we say within the 15-minute consultation. Just to be clear, if you don't work that way, I mean, what the way that we work is usually if a patient is interested in working with us, we'll speak with them over the phone or by video to hear a little bit about what they're wanting help with, and to share with them about the way that we work, so we can figure out whether it's going to feel like a good fit. If for some reason you don't do that and you just meet with people right off the bat to do an evaluation, this can be a part of that session as well, right? It's just about making sure that you're not just starting right off the bat with a patient, but in addition to assessing and connecting, that you're being clear about what you have to offer and about what it's going to take from them in order to get better. So to that end, basically, we say after gathering information, whether that's on the phone or video, and empathizing with them and connecting with them, you're going to sort of do these 3 things. And that's what we're going to talk about this morning. You're going to state what you have to offer, right? And I'm going to walk you through that in the next few slides. That's sharing with them that you have the tools to help them, that you'd love to help them to get better. And that's, kind of the good news, right? We call that dangling the carrot. You're also going to clarify what it's going to take from them, because we're not magicians and we can't just fix people without their participation. So we're going to tell them what it's going to take from them. And we call that at some point throughout the day, the gentle ultimatum. What are you going to need to do in order to get better? And then we're going to ask them, what do you think of that? Like, are you willing to do that? And we're going to ask them that in a way where it's clear that they can say yes or they can say no. So that's what we call sitting with open hands. Are you going to be willing to do that work? And I would really understand and respect you if you chose not to. And that's the kind of sitting with open hands. So let me tell you a little bit more then about the carrot. So we can dangle the carrot in multiple ways, and we'll be teaching you this related to different parts of the therapy session. So one thing we can do is we can say that I have lots of great tools that I think will help you, right? Presumably we're experienced, and if we're going to work with them, we're experienced in what it is they're looking for help with, whether it's social anxiety or panic disorder or depression. We can say I have lots of great tools that I really think I can help you to overcome your depression or your anxiety. We can also share with them that we love helping people who struggle with social anxiety or depression, right? I'd love to work with you. As Mike said, I think we do really great work together. And we can also kind of, imagine the great outcome that they might have if they did this work. It'd be incredible to see you feeling confident and building connections again, feeling joy and happiness. And I've seen that happen for so many others. I'd be really excited to see that happen for you. So we want you to, share with them what it is that you have to offer in kind of a positive and optimistic way.
Verifying what it will take is what we call the gentle ultimatum. I love this term because gentle is key, but ultimatum is also key. And sometimes we can lean one way or the other. And in order to deliver a gentle ultimatum, you need to first off know what it is that you're going to require. What is it that will be the key elements to bring about the recovery they're looking for, that they're going to have to do. And then the gentle part is delivering that in a way that's open and warm and inviting. So you say something like, I've got to be honest with you, I'm pretty demanding, but it's because I believe in people. I want to be clear about what I'm going to ask you to do, so you know what you'll be signing up for with this approach. So that's going to take, a few things. Examples of requirements might be 20 minutes of homework a day, 5 days a week for somebody with depression, where they write out, what are your negative thoughts and challenging them. Could be completing measures before and after every session. I don't do any sessions without some form of mood survey before and after every session. I feel like my son's a car mechanic, and if you ask me to do therapy, it'd be like asking my son not to use his tools to fix your car. He'd say, I'm sorry, you can go to the next garage, but I can't do that. And I'm the same. It's a key tool for me. And then, weekly sessions, committing to actually engaging in the work and setting aside time in their schedule to engage fully in the therapy.
And so then after we've shared with them what we have to offer and shared with them what it would take, right? Then we're going to ask them for commitment, because otherwise all we're doing is kind of talking at them. So we're going to say, I want to check in with you. Are you willing to commit to this process? It's not for everyone. So I want to make sure that it feels like a good fit for you. And that actually feels very comfortable to me, because I tell people that the 15-minute phone consultation is an opportunity to figure out whether we're going to be a good fit for each other. And so after I listen to them and say, I think sounds like, I could help you with what you have to offer, I'm kind of saying, I think I'm a good fit for you, right? Like, I think I could help you. But then I'm saying, are you a good fit for me, right? Or maybe it's the opposite. You're a good fit for me. I can help you, but am I a good fit for you? Do you want what I have to offer? So, and we could say not everyone chooses to work with me. And I totally respect that. This might not be the approach that you're looking for. I'd love to work with you. Is this something that you'd be willing to commit to? And go ahead. Were you going to say
Do you want me
something,
to jump in with the first metaphor?
Or you can do yours. Yep.
Yeah, metaphors can be helpful to bring it to life to people. And so one of the ones I use, even in the 15-minute consult, is to say, I'm kind of like a music teacher, and I took piano lessons growing up, and my mom was always practice, practice, practice. But when you come to therapy, I could just play some music for you and show you some, books about piano, and even model some things for you. But unless you're practicing in between our lessons, you won't learn how to play the piano. You won't learn how to, overcome this depression and be able to play the music of life, of joy and self-esteem. And so it's going to take that, 15 to 20 minutes of practice that we call homework every day.
Yeah. And then the metaphor that I often use with patients, and I frequently say it over my 15-minute phone consultation. And again, I don't always use these metaphors. It depends on how bought in the patient is from the outset, right? When patients already know, I have a friend who went to see you and I know what therapy is all about. We don't have to hit them over the head as much. But when patients seem really kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and like, you're going to fix me, then we want to be more thoughtful. And so I'll oftentimes tell patients that one of the things that I know to be really kind of an active ingredient to getting better in therapy is homework. And so I say, I'll be asking you to do therapy homework, nearly daily. And the thing that I think about therapy, kind of like personal training for the mind. And so, if you hired a personal trainer and they were just a fantastic trainer, and you met with them 1 hour once a week and you worked out, and you had this great exhausting workout, they gave you stuff to do between sessions. You're supposed to hit the weight room and do your push-ups and sit-ups and running. And then you just kind of met with them 1 hour once a week and you got a great workout, but you did nothing between sessions. Like, do you think you'd get much stronger? And patients, of course, laugh and say, no, of course not. And I say, and it's the same thing for therapy, right? So we could meet 1 hour once a week and we could do the best work ever. But if you're not actually putting the work in between sessions, if you're not implementing the skills and practicing, you're not actually going to overcome your depression or your anxiety. And so, you know, I'd be a great fit for you if you feel like you'd be willing to put time in between sessions and really apply what we're doing in sessions to your life outside of session. And, you know, and if that doesn't sound appealing to you, I would understand that too. So that's kind of my personal training metaphor that I like to use. And, you know, people really get it when you describe it using these metaphors too. So that can be really helpful. And we also invite you to develop your own metaphors. Something I love in training groups is learning from other therapists about kind of what language works for them and how they describe these concepts to their patients as well.
I think David often uses the learning how to play tennis or basketball metaphors, right?
Right. Basketball, he always says, right. And in terms of the measures and getting feedback, he says, you know, how do you think basketball players improve their shots? You know, they take a lot of shots, but they get instant feedback after every shot. Did it go in or not? And they can course correct constantly. And if you're a therapist and you're not using measures, it's almost like you're shooting, but you can't actually see if your ball goes in or not, right? Because you're not getting that kind of instant feedback. And so that's a metaphor you can use for, you know, the need to use measures throughout therapy. Yeah. So I think we were going to pause and just see if people have questions about what we presented so far. Just so you know, what we'll be doing next is actually doing some demonstration and kind of setting you up for practicing in your breakout groups. This concept, this 15-minute consultation of dangling the carrot and gentle ultimatum and asking for commitment. So if you have questions at this point, you can enter them in the chat box to Todd. And then Todd will relay them to us. And so maybe Todd can unmute himself and let us know if you're getting any questions. Hi, Todd.
How's it going, Jill and Mike? I feel I'm ready for a workout here. Basketball, the bike behind you, training.
Feeling stronger already, right?
Yeah, I'm just catching up with some questions right here. It looks like some people are saying how demanding both of you are. And that was a surprise to both of them, or to them. Let's see.
Saying that sounds kind of demanding.
Yeah, reading a 22-page thing from Mike and reading and feeling great.
Yeah, I'd love to comment on that one. That one was a particularly unique situation. I wouldn't normally be that demanding with most clients or patients, but because of the background that he'd given me, how he'd actually defeated almost every therapist or person he'd work with, I upped the ante, I upped the expectations, and it reminded me of I was a kind of national level athlete at one time in my early 20s, and I had a coach who really pushed us hard, and she'd say, "You can do that one more time. Let's do that one more time." And we're like, "Really, one more time?" I was a cyclist. You can see the bike in the background. But even though we hated it, actually, you know, riding in the rain, and she'd do one more time, and you're cold and freezing and you just want to go home, she was sending the message to us very clearly: I believe in you. And the more demanding she was, the more she believed in us. Now she wrapped that with a lot of support, right? And that's where I think this gentleman that I was working with, I really took him to kind of the elite level of demandingness. But I did believe in him. He was very passionate, and it would have been wonderful to work with him. But that's where you have to, you know, be flexible in how you work with what you are going to be asking of them. You know, for most people in a 15-minute consultation, I'd say, 15 to 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week of the therapy homework. You give you some podcasts to listen to, and I want you to start reading these chapters in the book. That would be kind of the normal expectation. But
yeah, I was going to just add that, part of the reason Mike's example, to be clear, in case that wasn't clear, Mike's example is not to say that every patient over the phone, he says, before you work with me, you need to read this cover to cover and do all the exercises. That was not Mike's, purpose at all. It was rather that this patient who was saying, I've worked with all these therapists, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this, this didn't work. Kind of a like how, like I heard that you have all the answers. Mike is tentative and thinking, I'm not that much better than all these other therapists he's worked with. So something else is going on here, wondering if the patient hasn't actually done the work that he needs to do. And kind of this idea that we can't really help people sort of against their will. And so I think that was setting more realistic expectations. I think the more sort of hopeless and the more your patient's like, and I've tried this, and how are you going to help me? The more that we want to, instead of saying, oh, I got all the tools, I can help you, we want to think, like, I'm going to actually really need your participation, and here are the things that you need to do. And then also, just to be clear, because we're going to demonstrate this in just a moment, but yeah, the kinds of things we're saying to people at the phone screen level is really more like, we use measures at the beginning and end of every session. And so I just want to let you know that that's, going to be involved, that I'll be asking you to complete measures so that we know how you're doing, and so that we can make sure that we're actually helping you with what you're asking for help with. And I'm going to be asking you to do some work between sessions so that you can really implement the tools into your life and see change. So, we're not hitting the patient over the head by saying, you have to do this, this, and this. We're really like warmly expressing that we have the tools, but the tools really involve participation. They involve regular attendance, et cetera.
So a lot of questions are flowing through now. So
Right.
I was going to use the gentle interruption with you, Jill. One of your
Please.
techniques. Really interesting one right here. It's you talked about the 15-minute consultation, and someone asked, does it make sense to use these requirements potentially in a client therapist contract agreement? That was one of them. And then another one was, what does this change the gentle ultimatum if the client is court ordered and to participate in therapy with you?
Yeah.
You
So
do
the first
agreement one,
question
and
was, do you
I can do the second one?
them? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. What, Mike?
Do you want to do the first one? I can do the second one.
Sure, that'd be perfect. So the first one was asking, do you put this in your paperwork, right? And I mean, my answer would be, that sounds great. Sure, why not? In terms of the basics, right? And so the idea that I'll want you to come to therapy regularly, that you'll be completing measures as a part of therapy, and explaining why, and that homework is an integral part of treatment. I think those, and if there are other things that are for you as a therapist, kind of non-negotiables, then absolutely, I think it's great to put that in your consent statement. And then also, I was going to say that for those of you who are pretty familiar with David Burns' work, he has something that's called the concept of self-help memo, which actually does include, kind of the requirements of therapy and the things you'd need to do in order to successfully engage in therapy, and kind of asks you, how willing are you to do each of these things? And so there is that in the toolkit that you can purchase from David Burns, but I would recommend certainly people include some of these things in their consent statements. And again, you can have that kind of upbeat, positive language.
Yeah, I include those almost every client that I work with, for sure. The second question was, how do you kind of adjust or deliver the gentle ultimatum with court ordered or mandated clients? And I love this question. I worked in a few different settings. One was in youth forensics, where I was the only therapist in my region that worked in this particular field, and so I couldn't refer out to other people. And so they would come to see me. I also worked with some other mandated clients who wanted to get their kids back because they'd had domestic violence going on, and also in the treatment center. And there's always some motivational component that you can lean on with it. So, for example, with the youth, they would be sent to me, and someone didn't want to come and see me. They didn't want to fill out the forms, right? I don't want to see some dumb counselor. They would use harsher language than that, but so I'd say to them, here you're being kind of forced to see me, and I'm being kind of forced to see you because I'm the only one in town, and it seems like we've been kind of put in this situation, and here's how I work. I do some carrot dangle. I can show you how to kind of get this turned around and get out of the system and get you free again from me and from your probation. but it's going to take doing this work. So there's a gentle ultimatum. Now, if you don't want to do that, then man, I support you 100%. The last thing I want to do is, be told what to do. Whenever somebody tells me what to do, I say, no, I'm not. And I wouldn't want to do that to you either. So I'm not going to do that. Be your choice completely. Now, if you choose not to work with me, 100%, I'll support you. And we can just let the probation officer know that you're not going to come and see me. And then he'll go back to the judge when, your court date comes up, and they'll decide what they're going to do. They might extend your sentence, or you might have to go to juvenile. If you chose that direction, kind of want to give the middle finger to the system, then, I'm with you. But if you want to come back and see me, man, I'd love to show you how we can get you out of the system. And I think it'd be fun to work together. So I'm okay, actually, if they choose not to work with me. There is going to be some consequences, but if they choose those over working with me, then that's okay. They're taking their risks, they're taking their chances, and I can respect that choice of them. And the vast majority of them then choose to work with me. Some didn't. They'd say, no, I'm going to screw the system, and then they'd go back and have to work with it again. But if that answered that question or not. But
those are great answers, both of you. I have one, that's so many more, but I have one more if time permits.
Yeah, we have time.
Both of you mentioned something about neurodiversity and capacity. And it's a great comment from Rima, who mentioned, you talk about doing homework and setting the stage early on. And she was asking, what if someone who normally does homework and is accountable, but then goes through an emergency period where they're incredibly busy and overworked and stops doing homework? Then what's your understanding, or how would you use the gentle ultimatum?
Did you want, I saw you shaking your head, Mike. Did you want to answer that first?
Yeah, I can dive in. I've had this happen, and we're actually going to touch on this a little bit later on when we think about fallback position. And I've offered them, maybe actually it would make sense for us to take a little bit of a break right now from therapy, and until things settle down for you, because it seems like there's a lot of pressure on you right now, and wouldn't want to kind of put you in this overwhelmed situation. But then my door will be wide open, and then I'd be totally eager to work with you when things do settle down and you have that time and energy to really focus on this. So I give them the option.
Yeah.
To take a bit of a break. Anything you'd add to that, Jill?
Yeah, I have one other thought, which is I wasn't totally sure with the question, but the situation will vary clinically. But let's say this is a patient who has been doing a good job of doing homework and then is in some sort of, I was understanding crisis mode with, crunch time or this or that. You can also basically say it sounds like for the next week or two, you're telling me that you have no ability to do homework, and, you've been so conscientious and diligent until now. So let's give you a pass and say, let's focus on whatever it is. What can I do to support you? How can we focus our therapy to help you in this moment of crisis? And then let's make sure that we hold ourselves accountable in 2 weeks when this passes or something like that, right? So of course we're going to be flexible. At the same time, the chances are that if the patient is suffering emotionally in crisis, that there's something they could be doing outside of session that would help them. And so that's where you just don't want to fall prey to thinking crisis equals no homework. It's like sometimes you need to double down and do like more work outside of session when you're in crisis. If you're working your tail off and 12-hour days, like maybe you actually need to get some exercise or do some meditation or work on the negative thoughts for 10 minutes that are stressing you out every morning. And so I think the important thing is that therapists are constantly remembering that holding yourself and your patients accountable generally is the way to go, right? And if you're going to decide to digress from that, be intentional about it and then come back to it.
Love that.
Do you want
to do one more question? If you have one more that you think is a good one.
Well, along those lines, Adam had an awesome question. So he's saying, so my understanding is the goal is not to get the client to work with you. The goal is to treat the client with respect, self-determination, and treat them as a capable people who are able to recover. Is that your goal, no matter how the client responds? Is this correct?
That sounds to me like maybe, or I guess I wouldn't say that's not my thinking exactly. My goal isn't to not get the client to work with me. And maybe he's thinking about the Mike example, but Mike can comment on that. But my goal is definitely not to have the client not work with me. My goal is to have clients work with me that are willing to do the work that they need to do. So I actually would love if every client wanted to work with me and wanted to do the work that they need to do to recover. So I actually think therapy is incredibly valuable and is what most people need. But I think that therapy without patient involvement, right? Therapy where patients aren't coming regularly, aren't, holding themselves accountable by doing the work, or aren't using measures, is not especially high quality therapy.
Yeah,
Does that address that?
I would agree, Jill, and I think there's a part of it that I'm wondering if Adam is hitting on here. It might be actually a really good insight. I think therapists in general tend to lean towards pressuring their clients to work with them. And so if Adam's saying the goal is to make sure we're not pressuring them to work with us, then I would agree with that. My goal is not to pressure them one way or the other, but to give them freedom to choose. My hope is that they'll actually work with me because I love working with them, but it's not my goal to pressure them. I want to make sure I'm not doing that, that I'm giving them full agency to buy in of their own accord.
The other thing, by the way, is what we're really addressing here is motivation and resistance. And so truly, and hopefully you're going to see this in your breakout groups, when a therapist, pay attention if you play the role of the patient or if you're kind of observing, when a therapist says, dangles the carrot, which is all about how much I'd love to work with you and I have the tools to work with you. And then they tell you what it's going to take. And then they say, let me know, how does that sound? Are you willing to do that work? Do you want to do this kind of work with me? What does it feel like? Our goal is to have you feel empowered to say, let's do it, bring it. Like, I want what you have, right? That's what we want. That is definitely the outcome we want. But we also want, if the person is like, oh, that sounds awfully hard, I don't really want to do that, we want to give them the space to say that. And then we want to let them go, because that's not a patient who's really going to engage in therapy and get better and make really good use of therapy. And I had a supervisor way back when who said something like, I really think it's better to be all in or all out of therapy for patients, because if patients are sort of dabbling, we're almost contributing to their feeling of hopelessness that therapy isn't really effective. So I'd much rather have patients say, yep, I'm all in, let's do it. Or, you know what, now isn't a great time, or I don't think I can do that, but I'll come back when I'm ready, and then do the work when they're ready. Because otherwise they're sort of, this diluted therapy where they're barely making change. And then that makes them think there's nothing really that can help me, and it contributes to a feeling of helplessness. So I hope that's helpful.
That's absolutely what happened in that consultation in the story that I told. He was so grateful because he felt empowered with my, fairly demanding requirements of him. He felt supported in being able to make that choice. I love that word you use. You're really empowering them to make the choice.
Yeah. By the way, it's interesting, and maybe we'll move on at this point, but we have 2 more Q&As throughout the day. But actually, interestingly, this is the way David Burns thinks of our training groups as well. Like, therapists are welcome. We offer some free trainings. And so we say therapists are welcome to come and engage in the free training, but they need to attend at least 3 out of 4 times. And they need to do the homework in order to improve their therapy skills. We're kind of saying, if you want this training, like, we'll offer it to you for free, but the payment is you got to be motivated. You got to do the work. We want you to get better. We want you to learn as a therapist. We don't want you to just kind of watch and observe and not improve your therapy skills. So it's really like a belief in the patient and the therapist's ability to like change and grow. And that's really what we're after. So I'm thinking, Mike, should we move forward? And
yeah, I think that's actually a great segue into a bit of a carrot dangle for our breakout group practice. We want to set this up, and then Jill and I will do a little bit of a demo to model how you're going to do it, and then we'll remind you of what the plan is. So in the breakout group practice, you'll want to have your handout, Keys to Effective CBT. You can see that here on the screen. And there's two resources. The first is just a reminder of the skills for accountability on page 3, but then on page 4, if you had page 4 handy, pull that out, and one person is going to read one of the patient statements. You have a volunteer that will do that. And your job is just to read the patient. You don't have to come up with anything. The therapist will then respond and try to include the 3 things that we've talked about: the state what you have to offer, the carrot dangle, the clarifying what it will take, the gentle ultimatum, and then asking for commitment with sitting with open hands. And then you stop right there, and your group leader will give you a little bit of feedback. What did they like? And how you could maybe tweak or improve it. And then you can practice it again with the improvements. And hopefully you get through, 2 or 3, maybe even 4 practice rounds with the one person in 5 minutes, and then switch roles so that as many people can get practice as possible. And so we want to do a little bit of a demo. We're going to invite Zane to open up his mic, and I wonder, LJ, can you spotlight Zane, one of our brilliant colleagues. And Zane is going to play the role of the patient, Jill will play the therapist, and I will play the role of the kind of group leader, providing a bit of feedback to model what you're going to be doing when you go into the breakout groups.
And I'll just also add that while you're watching our brief demo, pay attention to what I'm doing and see whether you think I'm hitting the mark on all 3, whether I'm missing, if you were giving me feedback, what kind of feedback would you be giving me? And that's the best way to learn as well. And when you're in your breakout group, if you're not actively demonstrating, we want you to be taking notes on what the person's saying, and you're rating in your head. Did they do the carrot? Did they do the ultimatum? Did they ask for commitment? And that's just the best way for you to get really engaged in the learning. Okay, so I think Zane is going to be the patient,
Awesome.
reading that patient statement, and then I'm going to demonstrate being the therapist, and then Mike is going to be my trainer and give me some feedback.
So thanks so much, Zane, for volunteering, and you can go ahead and read the patient statement.
I really want to overcome this anxiety. In the talk therapy I tried before, it didn't really seem to help.
Great. So I'm going to assume that I've done plenty of empathy in this call as well, right? So I often will say empathy, 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 like I've done a lot of listening. So Zane, yeah, I'm glad you've been sharing with me about this social anxiety that you've been struggling with. And I want to let you know that I would love to work with you. I think we'd be a really good fit. I have a lot of really great tools to help you and other patients overcome social anxiety. And I think we could totally get there together. I also want to be really honest with you about, what it's like to work with me and kind of what it's going to take to get those, really good outcomes in our therapy together. And so one of the things, it may seem kind of simple, but I am going to ask you to come to therapy weekly, even when you're busy and things are going on in your life. That kind of a good dose of therapy is weekly therapy. So I want to make sure that you're able to come weekly and meet with me weekly. I'm also going to ask you to use some measures and fill out some measures over the course of therapy, so you and I can make sure that you're getting the help that you want, that we're staying on track, and that you're getting better, kind of holding us accountable. And also, I'm going to ask you to do some homework between sessions. I'm going to give you some things that will stem from the work we're doing in session to practice, right? So that you can really kind of learn skills and tools and implement them between sessions so that you can get better. And so I just wanted to tell you about that.
Awesome. And stop and pause right there. Excellent. Jill, I loved your carrot dangle at the beginning. You said, love to work with you. I think we'll be a great fit. I've got some fantastic tools. Stating what you had to offer. And you were also very clear on 3 things: the weekly sessions, the measures, and then the homework. I'm wondering if you try it one more time and make sure you ask for commitment this time at the end. Okay. Zane, would you read that patient statement one more time?
I want to overcome this anxiety, but the talk therapy I tried before just didn't really seem to help.
Okay, so I'm going to again remind myself that I did a really good job of empathizing with you already, so I don't go into that. And yeah, Zane, you've been telling me that you've been struggling a lot with social anxiety, and I want to let you know that I'd love to work with you. I think we'd be a really good fit, and I have some really good tools to help you to overcome your social anxiety. And I think we could do some really great work together. I also just want to be totally honest with you and share with you what I think it's going to take on your end and what it would be like to work with me. And so one of the things that's super important is just to make sure that you feel like you can commit to coming to therapy weekly. I know that you're busy and, busy dad and working hard and have kids at home. And so I just want to make sure that you're going to be willing to make the space in your schedule and meet with me weekly. I also want to just share with you that we will be using measures as part of therapy. So I'm going to have you come in and just fill out a measure of your symptoms before and after your sessions in the waiting room. And we'll use those measures to make sure that we're making the progress that you want to make. And that'll be really important to therapy. And finally, I'm going to make sure that you're willing to do some homework. I'm going to be giving you some exercises that I want you to be practicing, things I want you to be practicing outside of session that will really enhance the work that we're doing together. It'll be directly related to what we're doing in session and just make sure that you're making some changes in your life between sessions. And I know that sounds like a lot. It's kind of a mouthful. So I want to check in with you now and ask you, do you feel like, does that sound good? Are you willing to do that work with me? Or I also want to be respectful and say, or does that not sound like the kind of therapy that you're looking for? So tell me what you think. Are you excited to do that work with me?
Someone pause right there. Beautiful. So that was a beautiful carrot dangle, and then the gentle up, and then you added that commitment question at the end. So before we go to breakouts, just a reminder, if you go to the next slide, Jill, of what our plan is. One person will choose, there's 3 patient statements to choose from. One person will play the role of the patient and read one patient statement, then person playing the therapist responds. And you can start by saying empathy, 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 if that helps make you feel like you've done that, because you don't need to go into that full. You're going to imagine you've done all of that already. Then using the 3 criteria, state what you have to offer, what it's going to take, and then ask for commitment. Your group leader will provide a little bit of feedback. And you'll notice that when I gave feedback, it was very, very brief. A couple of things that were done well, and then one area of improvement. And so we kind of aim for a 4-to-1 practice to feedback ratio. More practice is always better. And then after about 5 minutes, when you're in the role of the patient or therapist, then switch roles with somebody else in your group. There's no pressure requirement to engage. We do, little carrot dangle, encourage you to dive in with the practice, even if this feels a little new and unfamiliar. Dive in and see if you can get even just one of the criteria with one round, and then add another one the next round, and then add a next one. And certainly your group leader can do a little modeling for you if you need a bit of a nudge or a bit of support in that. Anything you want to add to that before we go to breakout groups,
Yeah,
Jill?
just maybe 2 points I wanted to add. One is that it is really important to find your own language. And so I do want you to feel that we're not just encouraging you to parrot here. And when we say clarify what it will take, I said 3 things. You don't have to say 3 things. Like if you're not actually requiring measures in your patients, then don't say that, right? We want you actually to practice what you're going to then go use in your therapy next week, the week after. So for the leaders as well, know that not everybody's going to have the same criteria, and we want you to use the criteria that seems appropriate to you. And then the other thing I was going to say is just people might notice these practice groups we're trying to make kind of really streamlined and really clear. And that's based on feedback we've gotten from you guys, that sometimes without this kind of clarity and guidance, the practice groups can be kind of vague and people don't get a chance to practice. So we'll be looking for your feedback today too on how this goes for you, with really clear criteria and kind of direct feedback and moving pretty quickly so that more and more people get a chance to practice the skills. So I'll ask for Daniel Herman. Daniel's going to be sending you guys into your breakout group. So let me check in with Daniel. You can let us know, if you're ready. And I want to say one more thing. I think Daniel will remind me to say this. So hopefully I'm being proactive here. So do not get out of the large group meeting. You're just going to stay logged in for the entire time. So we want you to stay logged in exactly where you are till 1 o'clock, till the end of the workshop today. And that is because Daniel will assign you to a breakout group, and that's the same group you're going to return to for additional practice throughout the day. So we want you to stay logged in. And if for some reason you get bounced out, not by your own doing, you land back here, then we'll make sure we get you reassigned to your breakout group. You're going to have 30 minutes to practice these skills with the help of a leader. So Daniel, are we good to go?
Yeah, we're all set. And thanks for that reminder. And of course, if someone does get, booted off somehow, if you can just remember either, the group number or your group leader, that'll help us get you reassigned.
Right. So we're saying when you land in your breakout group, maybe just jot down the name of the group leader or your group number, so that if for some reason you get booted out by Zoom, we'll put you right back where you belong. So make sure you have the handout printed in front of you, and we're going to send you off for 30 minutes. And so it's 9:45 on my clock. I gather that means we'll be getting back together again at 10:15. Okay, great. So hoping that you learned a lot and practiced and got a feeling for what it's like to be the therapist, and a little bit of what it's like to be the patient as well. And so actually what we'd really like to do is hear from you about what your breakout group was like, what you learned. And we have a couple questions to guide you. First, we're curious, if you played the role of the patient, how did it feel to be held accountable? And as the therapist, when you were in the role of the therapist, what did you find most challenging? And you can share more than that with us, but this is just some ideas to get you started. So if you'd like to share your thoughts with us, which we hope you will, we want you to send a little note in the chat box to Zane, and you can just say, I want to share. And then we'll unmute you, actually, and then you can communicate with us and share. We'd really love to hear what you learned and have a little bit of a conversation with you about that before we move forward with the rest of the teaching. So we'll give you a minute to send a note to Zane, and then Zane's going to find you and unmute you, and then we'll chat with you.
All right, so we have one volunteer who'd like to share, Nicholas. So I'm going to turn your microphone on.
Hello. Is it okay if I answer number 2?
Yeah, well, you can tell us whatever you'd like, Nicholas. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you, Jill. Let's see. So asking for the commitment was the hardest part. And when I did my second practice, I said, so let me just clearly ask the question, is this something you're willing to commit to or not? And I felt kind of anxious in my stomach, like, I guess because I'm thinking, they're going to think I'm a jerk, or I'm going to push people away, or I'm not going to have any patience, or, I'm a terrible coach or therapist or whatever, things like not very strong. I mean, maybe like 3% anxiety. But that anxiety from they think less of me, other people would think less of me. I'm not going to be effective. I'm not going to be successful. And it's not like I won't have patience, I won't have money. I just mean that I won't have people who want to work with me. And then, what would that mean about me? I guess it'd mean that I'm worthless. So things like that. But at a very low level, like believing those irrational thoughts at maybe 3%, and therefore being anxious at 3%.
Okay, so first of all, you sound so self-aware, and in trying to role play being the patient, the therapist, you're already even kind of doing your own personal work on realizing what it is that you were thinking and feeling, and even some of the distortions in those thoughts. So I love to hear that. And I'm just curious, what kind of feedback did you get? Like, did you get feedback from the person in the role of the patient, or from the leader that said, even though you were feeling kind of self-conscious about it, how did it land for them? Did you get any kind of feedback about that?
I did. In my first version, the feedback was not, you're too harsh. But there was to put in a little bit more about, either way, I respect you. I think the statement they suggested was, I did say some of that, but I honor your decision. If this is not a great fit, I understand. If down the road you have a change of heart, my door is always open. So a little bit more of that, I guess, saying, whatever you do, I respect you, I care about you, and I'm available to you.
Yeah. Right. So it's kind of a question, and I'll let Mike jump in too, but of maybe softening it a little bit, right? So are you willing to do that or not? Maybe, and again, we can say that in a sassy way or in a warm way, but maybe that felt a little abrupt, but maybe adding that, sitting with open hands, I'd love to work with you, and I hope you'd choose to work with me. And I'd also totally respect you if this doesn't sound, like a great fit for you. It's almost sometimes these processes are iterative, and sometimes I like to think of a song with music where there's like a chorus and the chorus comes back again. And so sometimes we say, are you willing to do that or not? And then we kind of continue by saying, don't get me wrong, I actually would love to work with you. I hope this sounds good to you, but I also want to be respectful if it doesn't. Anything else, Mike, you want to add?
Yeah, I appreciate, Nicholas, you took my course and we had such a great time together. So I was glad you opened your mic here, because that feeling of anxious with asking for the commitment, that's real, right? And I certainly have felt that. And just, I can't see very many, but show of hands, how many of others have felt a bit of anxiety about asking for commitment? Yeah, I've seen a number of hands there. And so it can be, and I love that you jumped right in and went for it, because it's that kind of, it's a bit of a risk, right? What if they say no? Well, but what if they say yes? Either one, right? They say yes, then I have to deliver. If they say no, then I feel a little rejected. And so, so I love that you jumped into that and got that feedback as well to really enhance that kind of gentleness and open hands component, which can make it feel a lot more empowering to both.
So Zane, let's thank you so much, Nicholas. Let's see if there's anyone else who wanted to share at this point.
Yes, our next comment comes from Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Hello. Yes, I enjoyed the breakout group, and I feel the leader gave great feedback. And I noticed though, when I go to do the replay, I almost get tongue-tied after, doing the second set of it. But yeah, it's a practice, and it's a really great feedback, and being in the patient as well as the therapist accountability. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Kim, can we ask who was your leader, and what was the feedback that you
Angela.
really appreciated? Angela. Oh yeah, she's awesome.
Yes.
Of course. What was the one piece of feedback that you found helpful from Angela? I'd love to hear what
I think I just saw my closing part, more so just to add a little bit more into it instead of just being blunt. I think, I think more of a paradoxical kind of thing. So that part. So I kind of got twisted on that. Yeah, I think I did gentle. I think it was just doing a paradoxical type of thing, because it was a difficult one. It was the one about the husband saying that she needed to listen, right? So trying to get the right word in there. Yeah. So I think to more so concentrate on to build the relationship could be a difficult one, because it is your husband more so than your problem. You know what I mean? So yeah. So that was good though.
That is a challenging one. I'm glad you took that one on. We put that one in on purpose to kind of throw at you. And that's great. You took that one on.
Thank you.
And
thanks.
And that's absolutely the experience we have when we're, kind of stepping into this. You do it once, and then you get a bit of feedback. You kind of get in your head, and then you're thinking more technically. And so I love that you continue to practice, and then got a little more comfortable with it.
Sometimes
all right, our next comment.
Feedback. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, sometimes when we get feedback, we do get tongue-tied because we're trying to say it, and then we're trying to correct what we said, and then we have a lot of thoughts, and that's why practice gets us, more and more comfortable. Zane, you have one more person?
Yes, our next comment comes from one of our small group facilitators, Dipti.
Great. Hi, Dipti. Oh, wait, you're not unmuted
Dipti, you
yet.
are
Hold on.
muted. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
There you go.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I was with some very experienced therapists, so they knew that what is the requirements that the client will have. So we were having the challenge of how much of that should we reveal in the first 15-minute consultation. the requirements. So there are so many requirements, and so how do you do that? So that was one challenge. I thought I'd just put it up as a question. It was a great question.
Tell us more though, Dipti, what kind of, like, in other words, we modeled, let's say, some of these basic requirements, coming weekly, doing homework, filling out measures. Was the question, do you really ask all of that up front, or were you mentioning other kinds of specific, like what were other requirements that you were struggling to know? Should we mention them or not?
Yeah, so say for example, the client with alcohol, like saying that my friends say that I drink too much of alcohol and that's why I'm here, my friends and family. So then with that person, would it be necessary to mention that you may have to discipline yourself or deprive yourself of some alcohol, or something of that kind, or just say that you will have to do some self-examination and do some monitoring about what kind of work. So it has to be more generic or more specific.
I can take a stab, and then Mike, please, if you have something else to add, please do. So my thinking is I don't get really in detail in that first 15-minute consult of like the methods that we're going to use. I don't go into great detail about all the various things you're going to experience or have to go through or things like that, because I don't actually trust that I know enough, having only talked to them for a few minutes. The only exception would be if there's something really glaring, like let's just imagine, for example, someone is struggling with alcohol abuse, and that's something that they come out and say to me, I really want your help in working on my depression, but I also just have to be honest, I've been drinking too much and I really need to get a handle on my drinking. I might say something like, I'll do way more thorough evaluation when I see you for our first meeting, but it seems like it's possible that you might have to really commit to working on decreasing or even giving up your drinking for us to really make progress on your depression. I might say something like that just because, clinically, if that feels really important to me, because I'm thinking that I'm in my brain, basically, I'm just saying things that I think might get in the way of therapy, right? Like if this person isn't willing to come regularly, that's why I bring it up. Or if I think they're going to probably need to work on this, I want to make sure they're aware of it. But I also know that I hardly know about this person 10 minutes in. And so I try not to say too much about what's going to be required of them clinically.
Yeah, I agree, Jill. It depends a little bit on how specific they are about the request that they're coming for. Like I have somebody who says, I heard you worked, in a treatment center and you can really help people with alcohol and I'm really struggling because I binge drink every weekend, and that's the thing I really want help with. Then I can empathize a little bit and connect and say, in my experience, we'll do a full evaluation and really get more detailed with this, but I can see on the horizon that there's going to be a few things. Right. And that will include some self-disclosure, telling other people and getting some support, maybe joining a support group. And then also we're going to be doing some homework here and in sessions and working with stuff. So if they're very detailed, specific, and they know exactly what they want help with and are coming and directive in that way, then I can be more detailed and specific. But yeah, that's that question. Dipti, such a good one.
Yeah, thank you. So Zane, if there is one more person that wants to share, we can have time for one more, and otherwise we're also okay to keep moving.
Great. Well, it looks like we have an additional comment from Adam. Right, Adam, you're on.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Adam.
Great to see you all. So one of the things that was really interesting that happened in our group is that all of us got a second chance at using sitting with open hands. And one of the interesting things in experiencing that twice is recognizing the fear of asking for that commitment while sitting with open hands. It almost feels like jumping off of a cliff a little bit. And then on the flip side, we all got to experience it twice. One from a standpoint of not receiving it, and two from a standpoint of receiving it. And it was really cool to see the payoff of that, because the pull to grab that hand when the person does it really well is so heavy. And to experience the difference between not receiving it and receiving it made it so clear how powerful it is to have that autonomy and the choice, as well as to have someone ask you for that commitment and treat you as if you're capable of following through on it.
I love what you're saying, right? You're saying that, like, as in the role of the patient, this is what we were hoping would happen too, that you felt like there was such a difference when the therapist sat with open hands versus didn't, and that it felt very respectful and it felt really good to have them sit with open hands.
Yeah, absolutely. As well as to recognize what that feels like, both as a therapist and as a client, and you know, despite it feeling so scary on the therapist end of things, it's so obviously worth it.
Yeah.
So empowering for the client, for the patient. Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, that was so great to hear. That's what we're hoping happens in these practice groups, right? That you really do get to see what it feels like. So thank you.
So I had noticed that somebody had put their hand up on the Zoom thing, and if and I know they put their hand back down, but in future, just connect directly with Zane, and then he'll.
That's
Chantal.
Chantal.
That. Yeah. Oh yeah, Chantal. Yeah. So want to acknowledge that we saw that there, but well, Zane can work through that. So, and there will be some future opportunities. So if you have something more, then please hang on to it.
Yes, and you can also bring it up to us in the Q&A if you'd like as well. So we're going to move forward, and again, what we're teaching you, this kind of framework of the kind of the carrot, the gentle ultimatum, and the sitting with open hands is going to be we're going to keep coming back to it throughout the morning. Not to fear, we're not actually finished with it yet. We talked about that kind of first obstacle of patients not really knowing what to expect, and how we kind of solve that with the 15-minute phone consultation conversation. And another obstacle that we all really struggle with that's related to accountability is when our patients go on and on, or when our sessions, I should say, go on in a sort of unfocused way. A lot of therapists that I train ask that question: how do you keep your sessions on track? How do you keep your patients focused? And so we'll run a poll now. Let me run that for you. And we want to know when sessions do kind of go on in unfocused ways. Thanks for running that. What do you do? So do you interrupt your patient when they start kind of going on and on and on? Do you ask them open-ended questions to understand more about what it is that they're talking to you about? Do you kind of offer helpful suggestions to whatever it is they're bringing up that day? Or do you raise your rates so that they realize how valuable therapy time is? So I'll give you guys another 30 seconds or so. We only have about half of you having completed the poll. So just go ahead and click, what do you tend to do when this happens? Okay, I'm gonna end the poll and I'll share the results so you guys should be able to see. So 52% of you, about half of you, said you interrupt and redirect. Another 35% said you ask open-ended questions. 11% said you offer helpful suggestions. And one of you, probably tongue-in-cheek, said you raise your rates so they realize how valuable therapy time is. Great. So lots of you with the interrupting and redirecting, and a good amount of you with asking open-ended questions. So let me also say that when I ask therapists this, like, what do you do when your patient goes on and on? A lot of therapists, and actually I would fall into this camp, might say, well, sometimes I interrupt them and redirect them because I'm in my mind like, we got to get to work. Other times I just kind of listen to them and therapy session and kind of go wherever they go. And sometimes I alternate between the two. Like sometimes I'm like really eager to get to work, and so I'm kind of very directive. And then sometimes I get feedback from them that I'm too directive, so then I kind of pull back. And so what we're going to offer you now is a framework for responding to this kind of meandering session that we think is really going to help you kind of to stop yourself from just stopping the patient and course correcting kind of forcefully, but also not just following them in sort of an aimless way. So the invitation, that's what this step is called. The invitation step is where we invite the patient to kind of pause, right? To ask them, is it time to get to work, and to pick something specific to work on without kind of bulldozing and forcing them to do that, which ultimately would lead to resistance, right? Imagine your patient is going on and on about something and you say, so anyway, panic disorder, right? That's going to feel kind of pushy and probably set things on the wrong track. And then on the other hand, if you just listen and don't, interrupt at all, you probably won't ever really get to the work of therapy. So the goal of what we call the invitation step is, again, to hold yourself and your patient accountable to moving from the kind of empathy phase of therapy, where you are listening and you're really kind of allowing the patient to share how they're thinking and feeling, into the change-focused phase, while making it clear that the patient has a choice. So we want to be clear as cognitive behavioral therapists that we don't think that empathy only is enough, right? We think it's necessary, but not sufficient for change. So there's always going to come a time, even when we've been empathizing, that we're going to need to kind of shift gears and figure out, is it time to get to work? So with the invitation step, our goal is to listen to the patient and offer them empathy. And then, to ask, are they ready to roll up their sleeves? And you don't have to use that phrase, but are they ready to kind of shift gears and get to work? Because there is something else that we have to offer them. But we're also giving them the choice, kind of like Adam said, the sitting with open hands, that they get to choose. Are they ready to get to work, or do they feel like they need more time actually to talk and for us to offer some support? I'm just checking to make sure it's still my turn to talk here. So why would you do the invitation step? So as I said, we really want to communicate to our patients gently that listening alone will not be sufficient, right? So if we do pause and we say, you've talked to me about A and B and C, and I'm wondering, would now be a good time for us to kind of shift gears and pick one of those things and get to work on them? That phrasing alone is showing them there's something more I have to offer than just listening and support, right? I'm communicating that that's not enough, and that active effort, that shifting gears, that picking something and working is necessary. But it also gives the patient permission to talk more if that's needed, because I don't actually know when my patient is ready to get to work, and I don't know actually if there's something else on their mind that they maybe haven't even told me that feels essential to share with me. So it puts the patient in charge, but it still holds them accountable, and it holds you accountable. And then it also reduces the yes butting, meaning, if we are making clear to the patient that there's a choice here and that they can choose which way, we're not telling them what to do. We don't end up with them kind of saying yes, but then actually resisting later on. That's our goal, is to be really kind of open and transparent about the process. So Mike has a story to share with us that kind of demonstrates the importance of the invitation step.
One of the questions that came up for me when I was learning this, and often comes up in training, is, well, when do you offer an invitation? Like when do you do it? You start with, if we look at the team model, that, the testing and then the empathy is so key and critical. We want to make sure we're listening and really connecting. But then when do we offer the invitation, shift into that assessment of resistance and agenda setting? And so I struggled with this early on and would lean towards more empathy rather than less. And this one session I was in, I was trying to work on doing my invitation a little bit better. I think we probably had a class that week, and I thought, okay, this week I'm going to do better at the invitation. And I had this particular client who, he was a great guy and loved to talk. And so he was talking, and I would say, oh yeah, tell me more. And how does that feel? And what's that like for you? And then he would talk some more. And it was getting a little bit later in the session. And I finally thought, oh, I've got to issue an invitation. And so I said, hey, you've been talking about kind of XYZ, and I'm wondering if now would be time for us to make a bit of a shift and get to work on something. And his response was powerful for me. I'll never forget it, because his response was, well, I was wondering when we're going to get to work on something here. It was such a powerful reminder to me that if you offer the invitation in a very open and gentle and warm way, even if you do it early, that's okay, because you can still give the option to continue to talk, but offering it late can be a real error, because they may be wanting to get to work, and you're making the decision for them by waiting longer. So it was a powerful one for me to say, you know, it's okay to actually offer an invitation a little earlier in the session.
And I'm going to share, I have one more story about the invitation that I'll share with you guys too, that kind of addresses this when and early and often concept, which is that I had a patient I was working with who actually had bipolar disorder, and we were working, you know, well on his depression, this particular piece of it, and he was on medication as well, but he also was going through a divorce. The divorce really wasn't super relevant to like what his depression was about. It was a lot of low self-esteem and achievement addiction and things, but it was happening simultaneously. And so we had been working really well together in a focused way. And then there was stuff going on with the divorce, and he was super mad at his soon to be ex-wife. So he would come into session and sit down. And before I really had a moment to like look at his measures or say anything, he would just go on and on about how pissed off he was at his ex-wife. And you know, when your patient's talking about how mad they are at someone, you feel like you need to empathize. So I was listening and offering him support. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, when are we going to get to work on the stuff you came here for? But I would listen and offer empathy. And then I would say, you know, at some point I would kind of say, so Mark, you've been telling me about how angry you're feeling at your ex-wife. And I just wanted to pause for a moment and ask, you know, would now be a good time for us to shift gears and start to get back to working on what we've been working on before? Or do you feel like you need more time in session today to share with me just how frustrated you're feeling and angry you're feeling? And he would say, he said the first time I said that, he's like, oh no, I'm done. Let's get to work, right? So I thought, oh great, thank goodness. Okay, we're good. Now we're just going to work on his, you know, depression. And then the next session after that, he came back and started doing the same thing again. I thought, oh man, I got to interrupt him again. And so he starts talking about his ex-wife and how angry he is. So I kind of roughly say something very similar. And he's like, oh yeah, no, honestly, I'm done. Like I got friends I can talk to about my anger. Like I really want to work with you on my depression. But invariably he would come back and I had to do the same thing. So what happened was I ended up like maybe 3 sessions in, I kind of, you know, probably shifted in my chair and I said, you know, so Mark, and he goes, I'm ready to get to work. So basically I had trained him through my very gentle interruption and my empathy, kind of what was next. And so he said, you know, he himself said, I got to stop this. Like, this is not how I want to be using my therapy time. Like, you've been very kind to listen to my ranting, but I got other people I can rant to, right? Like, I'm paying you too much money to rant here. Like, you know, let's get to work. And then I could more quickly, with his permission, kind of when he would come in, be like, okay, so we're not ranting, right? We're going to work on your depression. So again, these are processes, the invitation, the accountability that we use in our therapy sessions, and our patients even start to get to know them and appreciate them, I think. So
you'll notice in some of the things that Jill was saying that, and we're going to touch on these 3 components of the invitation. You start with a little bit of empathizing, right? A bit of a summary of what they've been experiencing. So you feel that connection still. Then we move to it. And a gentle, subtle carrot dangle. Love to help you. We've got some great tools. Love to get to work. And the key is actually giving that invitation. Is now a good time to get started? Would you need more time to talk before we roll up our sleeves and get to work? In Jill's example, each week she would do a little bit of that empathizing, right? She'd say, I'd love to actually get back and get you some more relief from what you're talking about. But would now be a good time for us to do that. And, you know, trained, in a sense, Mark, I think we're calling him, that, yeah, this is an opportunity for doing something more. And so when we work with the invitation, it's, to me, actually a deeper empathy tool as well. You're still connecting with them, but then you're also offering them an opportunity and showing them that there's more that can be done here. Examples might include, you know, Claire, you've mentioned problems with depression, anxiety, procrastination at work, and well, I can see how much pain these difficulties are causing you. It's the empathy component. And I'd like to offer you more than just listening and support. And I believe we could solve these problems if we work together. Carrot dangle. I'm wondering if you'd like to get to work on one of these problems today, or if you need more time to talk and have me listen, the invitation with open hands. Another example could be, Amit, you've been telling me about the difficulties in your marriage to Susan and about the stress and anxiety that you're having at work. I want to check in with you now. I'm wondering if you feel like you need some more time to talk and get support, or if you feel like now would be a good time for us to, roll up our sleeves and start to work on one of these problems. I'd love to help you with your anxiety or your relationship. And I know we can do some great work together. But I also don't want to push you to get to work before you're feeling ready.
There's a lot to say on this slide, Mike. No, I'm just kidding. So we are going to give you guys a 10-minute morning break. And then when we come back from our break, we're gonna keep telling you a little bit more about the invitation, and talk a little bit about what happens when the patient kind of says, yes, but, and kind of talks over you, which is what often happens even when we do a really excellent invitation step. So I think we'll, did you want to say something, Mike?
I was just wondering, how long is our break?
It's 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, perfect. I just wanted to clarify because I didn't see it on the slide there. So 10 minutes.
Yeah, so we're going to give you guys a 10-minute break. It's 10:47 on my clock, right? So we'll be back at 10:57. I don't know. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. Just before the top of the hour. That sounds
exactly.
excellent. And
So
we'll
we'll
dive
get
in.
started again in 10 minutes.
Awesome.
Just a reminder to everybody to stay logged in, please, so that you don't lose your breakout group assignments.
Yes, so just, mute yourself, or, well, you're all muted anyway. So do what you got to do, and we'll see you in 10 minutes, and don't close out of the Zoom. So hope you had a good quick break there, and are ready to get back to learning with us. So we talked to you about what you do when you offer the invitation to your patient. And of course, in the ideal scenario, patient says, oh yeah, no, I'd love to get to work. And they just stay on track for the rest of your course of therapy. But we all know that that does not always happen. And so sometimes patients will say, yeah, I'd love to get to work, and then kind of pause and let you direct them and figure out what to work on. And that's fantastic. But sometimes patients will give you what we call the yes, but response, which is, oh yes, I'd love to get to work, but I don't even know where to start. And I didn't even have a chance to tell you about the noisy neighbors who live upstairs, and I don't even know what to do about them. And should I talk to them about it? Or do we think they'd get mad at me if I said something and then they'd retaliate? I mean, it's really impacting my sleep. Meaning your patient says yes, but, and then continues to talk on and on about either the same problem or a different problem. So here we're going to ask you, what would you say? And you can actually enter your answers to that in the chat box to Zane, right? And Zane's going to share your thoughts with us. It's going to take a minute probably for people to enter their thoughts in the chat box, which I understand. So just take a stab at what might you say if your patient says, yes, but I forgot to tell you about A and B and C and this and that, and keeps talking.
All right, we have Anna, who says, if it happens a few times, change the focus.
So that's Anna's someone who's definitely been to other trainings of ours, and she is saying if the patient regularly talks past the invitation and kind of says yes, but, and talks over you, you can use a method that we call changing the focus, where you really bring conscious awareness to sort of this pattern that the patient has been saying yes, but maybe has more to say. So that's great. We won't go into exactly what is changing the focus, but for sure, that's one thing we can do. Other ideas of just, yeah.
Jennifer, who suggests to say, okay, it sounds like you've got a lot you want to still share with me. I really want to listen and understand what's going on.
Wonderful. So that's a really nice display of empathy, right? You're listening and hearing that the patient has a lot more to say and saying, I'd love to hear more about it, right? Kind of a what we call falling back to empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Should we
We've
listen
got
to maybe
a few votes for empathy would look like.
Okay.
We have Kim who comments, I would ask him what he would like to express. I would ask him, would he like to express his feelings and talk about his neighbors, or which topic he would like to talk about in this moment? So it sounds like kind of perhaps a multiple choice of some kind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's great. I think that gives us enough to, right, to sort of say, maybe we'll offer some empathy. Maybe we'll kind of ask the patient which of these things that they're talking about they might want to share more about. And so ultimately, yeah, what we say is, and there's no script for this, but roughly what people are saying, kind of, we call it empathy plus accountability, right? So empathy only would be just that we repeat what the patient says and say, tell me more about that, right? And so we can definitely do that, but we also might, want to at least acknowledge that the patient did accept the invitation, because in that example, the patient said, yeah, I'd love to get to work, but, and on and on and on. So we might say something like, wow, it sounds like you have a lot going on right now. That's empathy. And on the one hand, you'd really like to get to work with me on some of these problems that you've been describing. So that's that kind of, that's putting a bookmark in it. It's like, you did say you wanted to get to work, right? So I'm going to remember that. And on the other hand, you have a lot more to share right now. In particular, you're feeling really stressed about your neighbors and all the noise they've been making. And you're wondering what to do about that. Did you want to share with me more about your neighbors right now? So very much what we heard from people sharing with you, Zane, in the chat box, some empathy. And then the accountability piece is just that sentence about, on the other, on the one hand, you'd like to get to work with me on some of these problems you've been describing, but then the sitting with open hands around, did you want to share with me more about what you have to talk about right now? So Mike and I are going to do a little invitation demonstration. We're not actually going to have you guys break into groups to practice this one. We have something else we're going to have you practice in a little bit, but we're just going to do a little demo here.
Jill's going to play the role of my patient, and I'm going to demonstrate an invitation as well as what we're calling kind of bookmark the accountability component while falling back to empathy.
Yeah, so see if you can notice what Mike is doing. What are the steps he's walking through in this kind of demonstration role play? So I'll start as the patient then. Yeah, as I was telling you before, I've been feeling really down and really unmotivated. I have so much work to do. I have so many presentations I should be working on, and it's just really hard for me to get myself to really do them and to concentrate and focus and finish my work. And I'm also finding that I have a lot of conflict at home. My teenage son is just being really rebellious, and I just don't even know what to say anymore.
Wow, Jill, you talked about a number of things. One is really feeling down, unmotivated. You have so much work right now, and you've got a lot of projects and having a tough time finishing work. And in addition, there's this kind of conflict at home with your teenage son. And boy, I would love to get you some relief, some help with any one of these, and got some really amazing kind of techniques and skills we can use to get you out of this funk, get you more connected. And I'm wondering if now would be a time for us to dive in and do a little bit of work on one of these, or maybe you'd like a bit of time to talk more about any one of these things, or maybe there's something else you haven't talked about as well.
Yeah, I mean, I sounds good. I would love to get your help. I mean, yeah, totally. That's why I'm here. But I didn't even tell you about the fact that my mom, she recently fell, and yeah, she broke her knee, and she's in the hospital, and I'm an only child, and she's just totally relying on me, and I need to figure out how to help her, and I got to like talk to the doctors and like translate kind of to her and support her and talk to them. Yeah, I don't even know where to start there.
Wow. This sounds really, really important, Jill. Like on the one hand, you would love to get my help and do some work. At the same time, there's this really awful thing that's happened to your mom. She recently fell and broke her knee, and now you're the only child, so there's a lot of responsibility on you to be there to help translate and to support her. And if you just tell me more what that's been like for you. What's been going on? Let's pause right there.
Great. Yeah. So just to kind of recap for people, our goal wasn't to demo a mistake as much as it was to really try to demo how it's done. And so just to recap, and maybe I'll even go back to this slide here with the invitation. So Mike did a really nice job of empathizing. He kind of summarized what it was that I shared with him that I was struggling with. And of course, he could have, like, we assume he's done lots of empathy and listening, and then he does this kind of summary statement, and then he dangled the carrot and let me know that he had some tools that he could offer me. And then he asked me if now was a good time to get to work on one of these things that I wanted help with, or did I feel like I wanted more time to share. And then, essentially I did the yes, but, right, I shared even more. And so Mike highlighted that, yeah, it sounds like you really do want my help, and you do want to get some help and get to work on one of these, but you're sharing with me this additional problem. And did you want to tell me more about that? And so hopefully that's a helpful demonstration for you guys about the invitation. We'll pause here and we'll take questions about the invitation. And so you can send those questions to Todd. And then we're going to move on, and just to sort of give you a snapshot, we'll move on, and for the remainder of the day, then we're going to talk more about what we call process resistance, and again, how to hold your patients accountable to doing the kind of hard work of therapy. So Todd, let us know if you have questions for us to answer.
Yeah, lots of great questions rolling in. There's a lot of variations of the invitation from, say, like Nick and David. Like, how early in a 1 hour session would you bring up the invitation? How many times do you offer an invitation if they yes but you? Yeah, or across longer sessions as well. Like, how often, just the magic number 3.3 times do we bring up the invitation? Or yeah.
Do you have any statistical analyses to share with us, Todd?
Well, funny you asked me that. I do have an amazing answer, or know of an amazing answer.
Yeah.
Most likely a blowaway that even David Burns would love. And Jill will now answer it. Well, shout out to David, who's not with us today.
Exactly. Thank you for echoing David's sentiments.
Yeah,
I'm happy to say something, but Mike, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just thinking there's a couple of different questions there, and
yeah,
I was just thinking about how early, and it really highlights the clinical example that I'd given. A little bit depends on where you're at in therapy, right? Like if I'm doing an intake session and really going through getting the full story, I like to do double sessions, a 2-hour session. Then I'll spend a good portion of the time just empathizing, getting the full story. And so it might be, an invitation an hour and 10 minutes in, an hour 20 minutes in. In subsequent sessions, it can be as early as 10 minutes in, right? You're just connecting and touching base, and hey, let's have a look at your homework. Should we dive in and have a look, or is there more that you wanted to give me? So there's a bit of a clinical judgment question with, how early do you offer the invitation? My leaning now is it's never an error to do it too early, as long as you're very open hands with it. You're giving them the option to empathize more, and they'll just tell you, no, actually, I wanted to talk about this. And so then you can fall back to empathy like we just modeled, and then reissue an invitation at some point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I say earlier is better because as long as you're offering open hands, then really all you're doing is kind of recapping what you've heard and asking if they feel ready to get to work, and they can easily say, no, I want to talk some more, and you're open to that. So I think it's a far more common mistake to offer it late or not offer it at all than it is to, offer it too early.
Great answers, as always. Another question from Tom. I don't know what we're talking about. Does Jill have the client and or Mike? Does Jill and Mike have the client set the agenda for the goals of the session? Such a simple question.
Right, exactly. Well, I'll zoom out and say that basically I try to do a thorough evaluation with my patients that usually lasts 1 to 2 sessions, depending on whether the patient has multiple problems and different things that I'm trying to evaluate. And I usually share with patients at the kind of end of that evaluation process as we're moving into therapy, kind of what I'm understanding the problems are, kind of the buckets of problems is the way I think about it. I sometimes do actually literally even draw a Venn diagram, right? You're struggling with this and you're struggling with this, and there's some overlap. And so I'm hoping to help you with kind of each of these things in therapy. And that's, and maybe we'll say in the beginning, as we're transitioning, which of these things did you want to start with? And so then I have in my mind, generally speaking, what it is we're working on. So let's imagine that that's, a relationship conflict. Then our goal, we both understand our goal is to try to work on that together for a while until we make some good progress on that before like kind of shifting gears and picking a different problem to work on. And so then kind of the beginning of each session, I go over the measures, right, to check in and kind of where they're at. And usually I really just kind of say, okay, tell me, I go over the measures and then I go over their homework. And that's the way of jumping right into the content, tell me, let's talk about what you did for homework. So that means we're already focused on your depression or your social anxiety or your panic disorder. There's kind of an assumption that that's what we're going to work on, unless there's some, crisis du jour or something else that comes up that should bump the agenda to something else. And if that's the case, that's pretty clear because the patient's saying, oh, I did my homework on this, but there is this thing I really want to talk to you about today in session. And then together we decide, okay, we're going to work on that instead of this. I don't know. Does that answer the question? And then Mike, I'm sure you have your own spin on that too.
Yeah, one little thing that I rely on is what we call the miracle cure question, right? And I'll even ask this in the 15-minute consultation. It sounds like, if therapy was completely successful, you got exactly what you're hoping for, and went, okay, that was worth my time and money with Mike. What would be different? What would change? What would happen for you? And that can start in the 15-minute consultation, just in a very broad way, and then be refined. But that can be a bit of a guidepost, to then follow through exactly what Jill just described. You do that full kind of assessment, say, okay, you'd said you want to feel better about yourself, and you got this dynamic in the relationship where when you get in an argument you feel terrible about yourself. Do we want to work on the mood first or the relationship? And then you can really fine tune and hone in with what their goals are. So it's a collaborative effort in that sense.
A+ answers. I have another awesome question from Emily. She's like, do you ever get concerned when clients say they're ready to work, but they truly need to talk more in that moment? So as a therapist, do you get concerned if they're maybe like trying to please you, not trying to interpret what she's saying, but like they're saying, yeah, I'm ready to work, but actually there's more that they want to talk about?
This is such a good question, Emily. And one of the things that those that are in my training course right now will hear me say over and over again is that we infuse empathy into everything that we do. There's only a couple of times when we don't fall back to empathy, and that's during specific methods. But the rest of the time, an invitation has an empathy component to it. But there may be times, even as you get a little bit further into the work, where something very tender will happen. It'll hit a spot, and you need to pause and just say, hey, what's going on for you there? What's happening? And so I always leave that door open, and that's okay to do. It's not like we were done empathy and now we're moving to this and you don't ever do empathy again. It's empathy and then you're building, but it comes along the ride with you.
Yeah, that's great. And what I was going to say, I'm not sure if it's related to this question or just the general theme, but I think a lot of, for me, a lot of doing effective therapy is just sort of knowing where you're at and what you're doing all the time. And so if my patient is bringing something up and in that moment, I'm just really kind of locked in and empathizing with them, like that's where I mean to be in that moment, and then I start to think to myself, maybe, like if the patient has experienced just something horrific this past week, there's probably no part of me that's like, we should be working on something else. In my mind, I'm just like, this is exactly what I need to be doing. But then as let's say that weren't the case, and I'm starting to, in my mind, be like, we're really not making progress on the panic, or like, I'm not sure why she's telling me this story. Like, how is this relevant? Do we need to be talking about this? Like, kind of goes on in my mind. Then I basically bring that up with the patient. Of course, I don't use those words, why are you telling me about this? But I find a way to kind of say, to pause, and the invitation might come in there, or let's just think a little bit about what we're talking about now. And is that related to what you want to be working with me on in session today? I often use the phrasing even, let's think together for a minute about how we really want to use our time together. Or even I'll say, we have about 20 minutes left of our session. And so let's think, do we want to do this or that, right? So it's really, again, this is all in the theme of holding your patient accountable, but it also means holding yourself accountable to like know where you're at, what you're doing. Is this what you mean to be doing? Is this going to lead to the outcome that you want? I don't know if that's helpful.
I just wrote that down, Jill. That's super helpful for me. And I'm certainly going to use that very soon with some clients. Yeah, I have a couple of more questions. I wasn't sure how we're doing on time.
Probably two more.
Yeah, 2 more questions and then we'll move on.
Awesome. Stan had a pretty complex question, kind of tying like accountability in the practice sessions to the invitation. So he was asking, the invitation is similar to accountability skill that we practice in the breakout groups, but has differences. Significant differences. How do these two skills relate to one another? In what situations do we use one or the other?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Or he was, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is maybe the question is like, why are you teaching me these different skills in one workshop? Like, how are these two things related? So what we would say is the theme is accountability, right? So the first one is at the outset of therapy, when the patient, in order to really have good accountable therapy, we need to clarify what are the expectations. That's kind of the first place that we end up feeling like we need to address accountability. And we're kind of going in order. The second place we need to address accountability is for how we use the sessions, right? Like what we're talking about in our sessions. And so I think our thinking, Mike and I, was like walking you through a course of therapy. Where are the places you're going to need to think about holding your patient accountable? So one is at that initial contact. One is as you're moving from empathy and listening, where there's really not much accountability going on, to getting to work. And then the third phase we're going to talk to you about in a moment, which is, once you have decided what you're going to work on, kind of holding your patient's feet to their fire in terms of doing the work. So I think that answers the question, but feel free to add, Mike, if you want to. Or
I think that you nailed it, and I think it's a good pickup as well. That you'll see components of each of them are overlap, right? Like you see the dangling the carrot, you'll see it every time, right?
Yeah.
Empathizing, there's always a component of that every time. So there's definitely some crossover components to them.
Awesome.
Yeah, we should. If you have a quick one, go ahead, and otherwise we can move on at this point. You let us know, Todd.
Oh, you're the boss, Jill. Yeah, we have one. We have several more, or we could pivot.
Give us one more, and we'll try and be quick with it.
Yeah, Nick is having lots of awesome questions and comments, and he mentioned one about, Mike, you had the example about the mother and the mom. And in the spirit of deliberate practice, he said, is it okay to end Mike's example with, do you want to tell me more about your mom, or get to work on one of these problems? And I think he was asking, is that an appropriate way to respond to what you were saying?
Yeah, my sense is that what Nick is asking for is, when do you reissue an invitation after you've empathized, right? And that's a judgment call again as well. I would spend a little bit of time empathizing. You've bookmarked and said, yeah, it sounds like you really would like to, get my help with this. At the same time, boy, this seems so important. Your mom is really suffering, and then, tell me a bit more about, what's been going on there. Let's just pause and give you some of that listening and support, and then after doing a little bit more empathy, then you might at some point then say, I'm wondering, you had said that you wanted my help, and I want to honor that request. While I wouldn't want to rush into things, would now be a time to come back to that, or would you need a little bit more? So spend a little bit of time with that. Okay. Should we move on, Jill?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. And that really, a couple of those questions were great transitions into our next section here, which is, once you've got an accepted invitation and then you've honed in on what they want help with, now you're clarifying what it's going to take. What are they going to have to do? You're getting that little bit more fine-tuned, specific tasks they're going to have to do, but they may be reluctant to do that. And the term that we use for patients that are reluctant to do the work is called process resistance or process resistance. You can tell it from Canada. And so you may have a client that says, I really do want help with my depression. I want to overcome it, or I want help with my drinking problem, or I really want help with my relationship problem. And that's kind of like going to the city of, feeling, amazing, feeling great, or the city of sobriety, or the city of feeling kind of calm and relaxed. They want to get there, but what's the road that's going to take to get there? And that's what we call kind of process resistance, because there's going to be a journey to get to that destination. So for addictions, there's going to be some discipline, some deprivation. For relationship problems, they're going to have to look at their role completely and focus on themselves. What are they doing that's feeding this conflict dynamic? For anxiety, for me, I don't know how to help people unless we're going to do some form of exposure. They're going to have to face some of the fears at some point head on. And for depression, there's going to have to be some written homework, even when they're not feeling motivated to do it. That's the road to get there, but they may not be aware of what that road is, or willing to pay the price if they are aware of it. And so we've got a bit of a poll here for you. How much therapy homework? I'm just going to read the poll here. Oops. And the poll, beautiful, awesome. How much therapy homework that you assign your patients do they actually complete? None at all, a little, a moderate amount, a lot, all of it. And of course, this is assuming you actually assign some homework. If you don't assign any homework at all, then none at all might be the answer for that. Just give you another 20 seconds there. You guys are doing fantastic at getting right on these polls and maximizing your time, so appreciate that. We've got almost 90% here, and so I'm just going to end the poll and share the results. Just one of you put none at all. 34% said a little, 48% a moderate amount, 15% put a lot, but only one put all of it. And that's certainly my experience. I'm probably pretty close to that as well. I think I'm better than I used to be, but Jill, what's your experience been like with homework? Is it pretty similar to the results that we're getting?
Meaning, yeah, I would say I'm somewhere in the middle, right? Where like definitely the person who said that their patients complete all of it, they should be teaching this workshop and teach us how do they get their patients to do all of their homework, because I certainly, even with all of my effort and accountability, don't find that. But yes, I definitely do have a lot of patients who do a lot of work and then have to address it with some patients some of the time.
We've got a couple of metaphors for accountability that we wanted to share, and I was at one time, I think I mentioned before, a pretty high level athlete, and I did a fair bit of running, ran a lot of half marathons, a lot of 10K, and I've never run a marathon. But if a client came to me and said, you know, I really want to get these results, I want to overcome my depression, I want to overcome my anxiety, I might share a metaphor like it's kind of like wanting to run a marathon. If you came to me and I was your coach and said, yeah, I want to run a marathon, but I don't want to do any training. I don't want to actually get out and do any jogging or running, but I'm going to run the marathon. Will you coach me? Any coach that's, you know, worth their credentials would say, well, I'm not the coach for you, because first off, it really is going to set you up for some disappointment, because to run a marathon, you know, it can be a painful exercise. And secondly, I wouldn't want to give you the impression that you could do that, because you probably get injured. You'll probably hurt yourself. It'll actually make things worse rather than better for you. And you'll never want to run again if you try to do it, because you'd be so disappointed. And so we want to keep them accountable so they know what it's going to take so that they can succeed with it. So they're all in with the therapy and the approach.
And I have a metaphor for you as well, but I just wanted to share, I think the metaphors that we shared earlier with you guys about kind of the 15-minute consultation, like the personal trainer and the musician, those are metaphors that are pretty easy to share with patients, right? They make a lot of sense to patients. For me, these metaphors about accountability are almost more for the therapist. They're more for you guys to hear. In other words, a lot of therapists that I teach and train feel a little uncomfortable kind of like requiring their patients to do homework. And they worry, as some of you might have, that this is kind of mean or harsh or just like, God, man, you guys have high standards. And so this is more like, for me, the metaphor I'm going to share with you is more, I want you to think about like a thought experiment. And so I want you to think that if you were sick and you went to the doctor, you had a terrible cough and you had a fever and everything, and your doctor maybe did a chest x-ray and discovered that you had pneumonia, and your doctor said to you, oh yeah, you know, the good news is I know what you have pneumonia, and actually this is very curable. I want you to take this antibiotic that I'm going to prescribe to you, and you know, penicillin and or whatever we're supposed to take now, but you're going to take it, you know, 3 times a day, every day for 10 days. And you should be really feeling better by the end of that 10-day period. Now, imagine that you said to the doctor, well, I don't know. I mean, I could try, like, maybe I'll take it like from time to time, or could I just take like 1 a day? You know, I mean, your doctor would look at you like you were nuts, but they would also kind of say like, no, you have to take it as prescribed, right? Like, I got this medication, you're going to feel all better, but you actually have to take it 3 times a day, 10 days. And if you get a stomach ache, you know, eat a banana, but like, keep taking it, right? Like, this is what you need to do to get better. And if you were like, well, but, you know, what about acupuncture? You know, they'd probably say, well, yeah, you can try acupuncture. I don't do acupuncture. I don't know that it really works for pneumonia, but if you want acupuncture and not medication, like, you know, here's the local person who does acupuncture. And so this is a metaphor for you all as therapists, is to think, you know, rather than thinking, oh man, it's really kind of rough to like ask my patients to do this hard work, you can instead think, like, if my patient wants to get better, this is what they need to do to get better. And I'm actually being really kind, and I'm really kind of using, I would say, informed consent to say, like, if you want this outcome, right? If you want to get over your pneumonia, you got to take your meds. Like, if you want to get over your panic disorder, you're going to have to get out there and do X, Y, and Z. You're going to have to do your therapy homework. So this is more a metaphor I want you guys to think of as like, if you want your patients to get better, it's totally fine to tell them what they're going to need to do in order to get better. Okay. I think this is my slide. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you next.
Yeah. So how are we going to do that? So a lot of the tools that you already learned, but it is going to be a little different than that 15-minute consultation. And here's where one of the questions, I think it was Dipti who asked in her group, how specific do we get about what they really need to do? And I say at the phone screen level or that 15-minute consultation level, I'm not all that specific. I'm more just saying you're going to have to be willing to do work between sessions. But once you get into the heart of therapy and you know what it is your patient is going to need to do, you actually can spell that out a little bit more. Or in the case of what we're going to be really showing you today is homework, then you can spell out what that homework might look like, what you're really going to be asking them to do exactly. So how do we address process resistance? We dangle the carrot. So we share with the patient, what it is that we have to offer and what that change is going to look like. We're going to use the gentle ultimatum. We're going to be really specific about what it is that they need to do in order to get better. We're going to make sure that we sit with open hands. We're going to spell this all out for you in a minute, but we're going to make sure you sit with open hands, which means that you're open to whatever choice the patient makes. And then we're going to teach you something that we call the fallback position, which we haven't talked about yet. And so I won't say more about it. I'll let us talk about it on the slide in a moment. So dangling the carrot, Mike is going to actually give you some good details on different kinds of carrots. But dangling the carrot, again, as you'll recall, is conveying a strong sense of hope and clarifying this kind of exciting and meaningful outcome that you have to offer. And this is the hook that's going to hopefully serve to motivate the patient. They're going to want what you have to offer.
I like to think of it as there's 3 types of carrots. It helps me to deliver. I think, okay, 1, 2, 3, what are they? And the first is something I think we can all very easily offer, and that is the joy of working together with our clients or patients. You don't need a ton of clinical expertise in certain models to want to work with your clients, and it's such a great one, because when people come to us, they want someone to walk with them in their journey. I'll often say to people, it's such an honor for me to be invited into your story, and I'm really looking forward to working with you. And so the joy of working together, that collaborative effort, the teamwork, that's the first carrot. The second is you're going to offer them something that they can learn, they can walk away with. There's tools or skills. I think one more slide there. Yeah. There's tools or skills or methods that they'll learn, right? With exposure, there might be gradual exposure or flooding. With some of the cognitive tools, it might be identifying the distortions or examining the evidence, role play techniques. With habits and addictions, there might be some stimulus control, self-disclosure, but you're going to give them something that they can take. And often I'll say, my goal is for you to actually get rid of me by becoming your own therapist, by having the tools you need so that when these problems hit you, you just pull out your tools and you're good to go. So they're going to learn some skills and some tools in our work together. And then the third is the outcome, right? The relief from the current suffering. Why I love helping people get free from depression, having been there myself. It's such a weight that's lifted, and I'd love to show you how to do that. So you're offering the outcome, or envisioning the joy of the positive outcome. So not only relief from the symptom, but relief from depression is also, you want to get back to that joy, that self-esteem, that looking forward to the day, right? If it's relationship, the current suffering is, you want to really figure out how to overcome this conflict that you're having and be close and connected, get that intimacy back with your partner that you're missing. So those are the outcomes that we're offering them with our three carrots. And so when we offer the carrot, I'll often say, I'd love to help you. Right? That's a great starting line. I'd love to help you with your social anxiety. And I love working with people with social anxiety. It's such a joy to see them overcome it. And I have some powerful tools to share with you. And I think we can do some great work together so that you'll feel more comfortable in social situations. You can have that confidence going in, that you can interact and be part of the world that you so desperately want to.
So then again, that's sort of, I like to say that's the good news, right? The good news is I have all these tools to offer you, and I totally think that you can get there and turn your life around. And then I wouldn't say it's the bad news, but the harder news is that there's actually going to be work required to get there. And so the gentle ultimatum, as you know, is where we're going to set clear and realistic expectations that there are necessary conditions for change to occur. So interestingly, actually, to some extent, there's a little like sort of therapist thinking exercise here, which is you need to be clear in your own mind what you think is required for the patient to recover. And what I expect of my patients might not be the same thing as what you expect of your patients. And we're not in the business of telling you exactly what you need to require of your patient. So you do need to think about that. What do I honestly think my patient needs to do in order to get better? And you want to deliver that message with warmth and empathy. So we're going to give you a chance to practice that today. So I might say something again. I've already dangled the carrot. So then I might say, I want to be really clear with you in my gentle ultimatum. I want to be really clear with you about what it's going to take so that you know what you're signing up for. We're going to face your fears head on by going into social situations that might be frightening at first. And other patients that I've done this work with have experienced incredible relief from their anxiety. That's kind of a carrot embedded there, but it does require courage and hard work on your part. Are you going to be willing to do that work with me? And actually, we teach these things in sequence, dangling the carrot, the gentle ultimatum. But in practice, we kind of go back and forth. Like I said, there's like almost a chorus that comes back again. If we feel we've leaned too hard on the like, here's what's required, we say, wow, that sounds like a lot of work. I'm kind of really excited to do that work with you because I know that it's going to bring you joy or happiness or connection. Other gentle ultimatums that we might say is, if I agreed to help you to overcome your OCD, would you be willing to face your fears without engaging in your compulsions, even if it feels uncomfortable? So this is assuming we know the patient has OCD and we've kind of spelled out the treatment for them, what it's going to take. Are you going to be willing to do that work with me, even if it feels uncomfortable? We might say to a patient who struggles with depression about homework, we might say, the last thing that I'd want to do is set you up to think that you can get these results that I'm talking about without the use of daily homework. And unfortunately, I'm ineffective without having you do regular homework, and I wouldn't want to mislead you. So let me know now, are you willing to do that therapy homework that we've talked about every day or nearly every day, and even or especially when you're feeling down and when it's hard to do it? And so we can use warmth and empathy in our voice and our body language. We're expressing that we realize that it's hard, but that we are only asking them to do it because we know that it's also necessary.
Not every patient or client will say, yeah, I want to do it. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm eager and let me have it. And some may be hesitant, reluctant. Some may be real clear, no, I don't want to do that. And that's where we have the fallback position, so that we can offer them options. We never want to abandon a patient and say, okay, well, too bad, so sad, see you later. That would be cruel and unethical. But we want to offer them options to empower them to make a choice that works for them. And so the fallback position is telling the patient what we have to offer if they choose not to work, to do the work, if they don't want to do the work. And this is where, and I'm glad you mentioned that too, we're not saying, this is how you have to do it our way. There could be a variety of options, and depending on the setting you're in. It might be referral to another therapist. If you're in private practice, you'll often hear Dr. Burns, David say, yeah, I won't see somebody, I can refer them to somebody else in the community. And there are other therapists who don't require homework in the same way or don't require exposure. And they're lovely people, and you could refer to them. You can offer that option. You may not be able to offer that option. For me, when I worked in the addiction treatment center, I was the only mental health counselor that they had to see once a week, and so I couldn't refer to somebody else. So what are my fallback positions? Or when I talked about kind of that youth forensics contract, they're mandated to see me. I can't send them to somebody else. There isn't an option. So what are your fallback positions? So it could be, taking a break and coming back to therapy when they have more time or energy or focus, putting a bit of a bookmark in where they're at, and having them giving them the opportunity to reevaluate the kind of therapy that they're looking for. Could be pausing and turning your attention to the barriers that interfere with the homework completion, right? Some people may say, oh, I feel so overwhelmed and I'm kind of stuck. And so then it might be, well, maybe we should take a pause from this work and look at what's getting in the way. And I'd be open to working with you on that. But I can't actually help you with the depression unless you're going to do the daily homework. Now, we make a shift, there will be other homework, it'll be different. But, I can tell you what that may be, and then you can decide whether you want to work in that direction. So your fallback position is really giving them options in a very kind of open way so that they can choose whether or not they want to move in the direction. And you're doing this, of course, with open hands, right? The sitting with open hands is showing the respect by letting the patient decide if they are ready to do the hard work necessary for change. And we present the options in a manner that gives the patient full freedom to choose not to work with us. We don't want to pressure them one way or the other, right? So when we dangle the carrot, it's giving them this opportunity. But if you ended by dangling carrot excessively, and I can really help you, and I've got a lot of great tools, and we can really work with you, what do you say? That wouldn't be so much open hands as going, I've got a lot of wonderful, that's why I love to work with you. At the same time, and fully support your decision if you chose not to do this work. You want to make sure you give them the option to say no with the open hands. And so we've got some examples of combining the two, and Jill's going to lead us through those.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking, let me just say one thing.
Oh yeah, we have one more slide.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say one more thing about the fallback position before I read these examples. When we think about it, I think when you guys are in your practice groups, you'll find that you'll really like dangling the carrot. That's going to be fun and probably easy for you. It might even be easy for you to do the gentle ultimatum because you kind of have in your mind what I'm supposed to say about what's required. I think the second part, this part we're teaching you, the fallback position and sitting with open hands, that's what's likely going to be hard, and that's what we see a lot. And that is really because it is hard to accept that someone may not be willing to do the work. And so
do you want to go back to the previous slide, because I think you're talking about that right now.
Yeah, right. It's going to be hard. Exactly. It's going to be hard to kind of remain at peace with your patient's symptoms. It's that we're all in this business because we really want to help our patients. And so sitting with open hands and accepting that the patient may not actually want what you have to offer and may not be willing to do the work can feel very painful and hard. And yet at the same time, it's kind of freeing. And then we don't feel like we're trying to convince our patients to do something that they're kind of clearly saying no to. One other thing I was going to say before running through some examples here is I remember David, just talking about different settings that you're in and what your fallback position is. It's tricky when you're in a setting where you really can't refer out or can't not see a patient. Most of us who are in private practice do have the liberty to let people know what we have to offer and to refer out if it doesn't feel like a good fit. But I remember David Burns, I think this is I think I have the details right. And if not, it works anyway. But he told us about a time where he was working, I think at the VA, and he was working with veterans and was offering them a treatment group that required them to do a whole bunch of work. And of course, he didn't have the option to not treat them. And so he decided to do a treatment group and then just a supportive therapy talk group. So he would walk them through and say, hey, there's this great treatment and here's what it looks like. But if you want to be in the treatment group, you're going to have to come every time. It's not a drop-in group. You're going to actually have to come every time and you're going to have to do the work and we're going to actually get you better. And here's how much better you're going to feel. And then he would say, and so are you willing to do that work? And then the nice thing is if patients said, I don't know, doc, that sounds like a lot of work. You can say, well, that's fine. Instead, you could just go in the talk only group and you guys can just sit and you can chat and you can, have coffee and you can talk and you're probably not going to get any better. Your PTSD symptoms aren't going to resolve, but you're totally welcome to do that group. And so I'm not saying, you don't have to say that to your patients with any kind of sarcasm, but it is this idea that even within a therapy session or a therapy contract, if you're in a situation where you can't refer your patients out, you could still make it really clear to them that if they want to overcome their symptoms, here's the kind of work that you'd need to do. And here's what they'd be needing to do. And if they didn't want to do that, that you'd still be willing to see them and support them, but they're probably not going to get better. So, you're still kind of giving them that option. And at any time, if you decided, sick of not getting better, I actually want you to help me, then we could re-engage and do the work, and you could do the homework. So, think a little bit about how you can phrase it to your patients where you really have a good, solid, honest fallback position.
This is where you may have to get a little bit creative with what you can offer as well. It reminded me of when I worked in the treatment center. Occasionally guys would say, I don't really want to see a mental health counselor. And they had to actually see me once a week in order to get, their certificate of completion. For some of them, there were some legal things required. And so my fallback position was, okay, well, that sounds totally fine. If you don't really want to do this work with me, you could just come in and check in for 10, 15 minutes. And we could just chat for 10 or 15 minutes, and then you can go back into, the other work that you guys are doing, and that'll save more time for the other guys in the program to do the work with me that they really want to do. And you'd be doing them a great service because they're really keen to do the work and the effort. And so I was asking my class the other day, of the 7 years that I was there, how many took me up on my 10 to 15 minute offer in 7 years? And only one took me up on the offer. Every other person said, well, no, I want my 45 minutes. I want my hour. Oh, okay, well, then we're gonna work. And so because I gave them that choice not to, then they suddenly had this motivation. And
right.
the one that
sort of like, who's gonna choose the bad version? Who's gonna choose the ineffective version? But but they don't realize that's what they're choosing if you're not making it clear to them the choice, right?
And the one that chose it, we had a great, 10, 15 minute check-in each week, and there was freedom for us, and he was finding real value in the other parts of the program, and he got what he needed, and that was fine. So it was very freeing for both of us, actually, rather than pressuring. But you have to get creative sometimes in how you offer your fallback position.
Yeah. So here are some examples. Again, we kind of fallback position and sitting with open hands sort of hang out together. So we put them in these examples together. We could say something like, Priya, it sounds like you have some valid concerns about doing this work with me. You're saying that it sounds too challenging and that you were hoping that you might be able to get better with just some support and encouragement. And I wish that I could treat your anxiety without exposure techniques, but my experience tells me this is a necessary ingredient in effective therapy. I don't feel comfortable stringing you along in treatment and not offering you the most effective form of therapy. I'm certain, though, here's my fallback position. I'm certain, though, that there are other providers who would be happy to treat you without exposure therapy. Although I'd love to work with you, I definitely don't want to force this treatment on you. That's my open hands, right? Do you think you'd rather work with someone else who could provide you with support without exposure therapy? So you can see that I'm trying to be really honest and really warm and making it clear what I have to offer and being willing to let the patient go while also, sharing what it is that that I do have to offer.
You want to get prepared to do a little more practice, and you're going to build on some of the things that you did in the first practice group and add another layer. So for those that you found like, whoa, there was a lot, we're going to layer a little bit more on you because we believe in you. There's my carrot dangle for you. And you've got some wonderful trainers to help support you. So what you're going to do is one person will choose one of the patient statements on page 5 in your handout. So you want to have that handy. Then the therapist will respond using the first 2 criteria. We're going to break it into sections to make it a little more digestible. First, you're going to state what you have to offer, dangle your carrot, and then clarify what it's going to take, and then the gentle ultimatum. Then the person playing the patient will respond, I'm not sure I can do that. And every time that we do this role play, the patient responds, I'm not sure I can do that. That's all you have to do. You don't need to remember anything else, so that you give your therapist an opportunity to practice the second 2 components by stating their fallback position and sitting with open hands. So criteria 3 and 4. Then a group leader will give you a little bit of constructive feedback, or if you're getting a little stuck, then maybe may give you a little nudge or a little tip along the way. And we're going to demonstrate that for you so that you can kind of see how that works. We'll draw Zane in to help us out here again.
And so even for the demo, because this is a lot of lingo, we want you guys, you could turn to page 3 in your handout packet, where Mike has really nicely laid out the tools in very digestible language. So you could look at page 3 of the handout packet for the definition of each of the kind of 4 steps here that we're going to be practicing while Mike and Zane demonstrate. So in this case, Mike and I are switching roles. I'm going to be sort of like the group leader, and Mike is going to be the therapist, and Zane is going to be the patient, reading the patient statement.
I'm just so tired of this depression. I can't stop thinking about what a failure I am.
Oh, Zane, such a painful thing. You're so tired of the depression and thinking that you're a failure. And I know you really wanted my help with this. And boy, I love working with people in depression. It's one of my favorite things to do to help you get out of this rut, to be free from it and get back to feeling that joy, that self-esteem, get your energy back and be able to be free from this thought that you think you're a failure. And I've got some powerful tools that I think when we work together, you can use not only now, but for the rest of your life. So you ever feel like this again, you'll be able to get that joy that you're looking for in life. Now, I want to be really clear about what's on the menu in order to get there. And there are 3 things I'm seeing will be necessary to get to that goal that we're heading towards. The first is you're going to have to be doing written homework by filling out daily mood logs, challenging your thoughts, using some of these tools. And we're looking at 20 minutes, 5 days a week. The second thing I'm going to have you do is actually listen to some podcasts of actually some live therapy where others have struggled with this. And I'll give you 2 to 3 podcasts per week. And then the third thing is when we come back for our sessions each week, we're going to dive right in. We'll check in with you for 10 minutes, but then we'll dive in and really stay focused on this. And I want to make sure that that sounds like it's something you'd be willing to sign up for and work with. How does that sound?
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do all of that.
Yeah, it is hard. You're absolutely right. And when I was depressed, the last thing I wanted to do was homework. And I wouldn't want to kind of set you up with the impression that we can get there without it, but we do have a couple of other options. Right now, I'm kind of reluctant to do this because I really want to work with you, but I do have other therapists that don't require this approach, this kind of homework, and they're quite lovely, and I can certainly support you in getting set up with one of them. The other option is that we could look at what might be getting in the way for you, what might be getting in the way of the homework. Maybe there's some scheduling things we can look at, some barriers, and we could make a bit of a shift in our work, which will require a different kind of homework. Now there still will be some homework to do, but I'd love to work with you, but I wouldn't want to pressure you in any way, and make sure it's really your choice as to what direction you'd go. What do you think?
Okay, so we're gonna stop, and I'll give Mike a little bit of feedback. We're not gonna do another round of it, I think, just for the sake of time. And Mike, obviously, I'm guessing everyone's like, yay, Mike, good job. That was a lot to cover and a lot to practice. So yeah, just to kind of go through, I thought, Mike, you did a really nice, you led, I was trying to take notes here. This is what I'm looking at. You led with some really beautiful empathy. And we're really kind of warm and connected. You had some really nice, I would say, juicy carrots many of them, that you love working with people, and with that struggle with depression, that you would love him to experience joy and self-esteem and energy, that you have powerful tools. So I think you kind of covered all three types of carrots. And then you said, but I do want to be clear, there are going to be three things that are going to be really necessary, right, for you to achieve what you want to achieve. And then you kind of laid them out, their written homework and listening to podcasts and being really focused in our work together, kind of staying on track. And then you said, how does that sound? That my one little piece of feedback is I do try to encourage therapists to say something more like, are you willing to do that? And the only reason is that sometimes patients will say, how does that sound? If you say, how does that sound? I'm pretty sure 100% of patients will say that sounds hard, because it does. So that's the only thing, is I might be a little more like, I imagine that sounds like a lot of work. Do you feel like you're going to be willing to do that work? So that's just a thought that I have. And then again, still in our practice, if the therapist does say, are you willing to do that work, we still want the patient to say, what is it? I don't know, that sounds hard, or what are we talking? I'm not sure I can do that. Yeah, I'm not sure I can do that. Exactly. So I just, sometimes when we say, what do you think? Or how does that sound? It leads to the patient really sharing their feelings, which is really valid. But ultimately we still want to come back to, yeah, it does sound really hard. Are you thinking you're, willing to do it even though it is hard? Or are you saying, kind of, no, thank you, that sounds a little too hard. So, and then I think you did some really nice, you shared your fallback position. You said, I don't think we can really get there without it, but your fallback where there are other therapists that you could work with that don't require homework. So that would be one option. Or another option is that we could work hard together to figure out what the barriers are that are getting in your way of doing homework, and really focus our attention on that, and see if we can overcome that together. So I thought you did a really nice job with that.
Awesome. That's such beautiful feedback. And one of the things I just love about this approach with team is that even when we're really skilled and know these things well, there's always areas we can tweak and improve. And it was a beautiful pickup. Yeah, because as I said it, I thought something didn't feel quite right even when I said it. And so this is what we're hoping for from all of you when you go into your breakout groups, is that you won't get an A+. If Jill was grading me, she might have given me an A-, and then give me a few tips to say, how can we take it to an A+? And our hope, and one of the things we talk about all the time in team training is joyous failure, failing joyously, so that we can learn and grow together. And so our hope is that you'll get, some real handle and do some things well, but also be able to build on the things you've learned and hopefully learn some new things and get it to another level. So
yeah, even when Mike and I get together, and like we have a course where we'll tell you about at the end of the day, but we get together to record some role plays. I'm like, wait, can we do that one again? I don't really like how I sounded that time. So as much as we try and we practice, we're always trying to figure out ways to refine, what we say and things like that. So.
Awesome. So when you go into your breakout groups, once again, a reminder, one person will read one of the three patient statements, and the therapist respond to your carrot dangle and your gentle ultimatum, and give your patient an opportunity to say, I'm not sure I can do that. An A+ Zane for your role play. I loved how you stuck to the script really, really well. So we can focus on the therapist's role and give them opportunity to practice. And then the therapist will respond, stating a fallback position, sitting with open hands. And then practice it again. And it might take, even 2, 3, 4 rounds. I notice that the groups are a little bit smaller, so there's more opportunity to practice. And your trainer will also give you a few tips, and you can have them model it for you too if you're feeling a little stuck, which would be great practice for the trainer.
And I'm just reminding people, I just put it in the chat again, if people are starting to get a little tired, you still need to be present and active in your breakout groups, and also staying till the end in order to get your CE credit. So again, we sit with open hands. If you're not interested in CE credit, then your training is your training. But if you're wanting to get CE credit, please make sure that you are here at the end of the program, so that you can actually get the link to complete your CE survey. And I say that a few times because invariably people email me weeks later asking if they can complete the CE survey. So I have to remind people multiple times. So Daniel, tell us if we're ready to go. And then if so, we're gonna give you guys 30 minutes to practice this kind of more complicated sequence, and then come back together to process how it went, and do just a little bit, make some more comments, answer some more questions, and then wrap up.
Yeah, we're all set to go.
Okay, fantastic.
We're gonna be
Great. So welcome back, everybody. We hope that, again, you had a really good experience in learning and practicing, and as we say, joyously failing and making mistakes and getting feedback and trying again. So we're going to do the same thing that we did before, where we're going to ask you to let Zane know, right? If you'd like to share with us a little bit about what it was like for you, what your experience was like in the breakout group. So here are a couple questions to guide you again. If you were in the role of the patient and your therapist was sitting with open hands and doing the fallback position, how did it feel in that role? If you were in the role of the therapist, what was most challenging for you? And as well, you can share with us more openly just about, what you worked on and what you practiced, what you learned in your breakout group. So let Zane know if you'd like us to unmute you.
And if you do have questions, we do have a Q&A coming up. You send those to Todd directly, but.
Yeah, right. That's true. You don't have to wait till we put the Q&A sign on the slide. If you have questions that came up, we'd love to answer them in just a few minutes.
Right, it looks like we do have a question that came up via Scott. I'm going to unmute his microphone so he can ask. Right, Scott, you're on.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if you have any advice on how to make sure that you don't come across sounding like you're setting up excuses for potential failure as a therapist or a coach.
I think if I'm understanding you correctly, you're wondering if there's a way in which this comes across as almost like blaming the patient. Like, in other words, I have the tools, but are you really willing to do the work? Is that what I'm understanding from your question?
Yeah, either that, or some flavor of just sounding wishy-washy about your ability to help the patient.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my initial instinct, and Mike, you can think about this and say what you think too, and maybe Scott, you can share more about what you're concerned. But I guess I'm thinking that, we're, as therapists, we're using this sequence because we really do think that we have a lot to offer, right? Like, I'm telling my patient who has social anxiety, for example, that I'd love to help them, and that I've helped tons of people with their social anxiety, and even these are the kinds of tools that we plan to use. And then I'm basically saying, are you willing to use these tools? Are you willing to do this work? I guess I would say that if you have a good, juicy, believable carrot, right? You really have something to offer, and you're really sharing the patient. I'm going to be here with you every step of the way, right? I'm here to help you and guide you and do A, B, and C with you. And I just want to make sure that you're gonna, that you're willing to do this work with me. I don't know. Does that help? Tell me more about what your concerns are.
It wasn't actually a concern that I had. It was a thought that just kind of popped in my head as I was playing the patient role and listening to the person playing the other role.
Yeah, and I wonder, did you think it was did it feel like that gentle ultimatum came across as maybe too harsh or too much, like it's all on your plate or something?
Well, yeah, I guess it felt like there was some sort of equivocation, maybe, that well, if things don't work out, then it's, so I guess it was probably, maybe the feeling was closer to what you initially had assessed, was maybe it felt like I was going to be set up to be blamed if things don't work out in therapy.
Yeah, which is definitely not the look we're going for, right? Yeah. Mike, I don't know if you had anything to add there.
Yeah, the only thing to add, and this is a great thought you brought up here, Scott, because I know when I was first learning team, I actually didn't have a lot of confidence in my tools and strategies, and so then I likely came across as a little bit softer, unsure. And so one of the tips that Lee Harrington, who was one of my mentors, gave me is borrow David's confidence. You know, David is wonderful. He's the master of the carrot dangle. Somebody even said the other day, you know, his book, all of his books are just filled with carrot dangling, because he tells stories about all the ways the techniques or the methods have helped specific people. And that was so powerful, because then as I began to do a lot of the work on myself using the techniques, then I got confidence in the technique. So you know, one of my rules in training therapists is you're not allowed to ask your patient or client to do something you either haven't done yourself or aren't willing to do yourself. So when I do exposure, I've done a lot of exposure myself, and it's terrifying, and I hate it at the beginning, but I love the results. And so I can say that with this genuineness and this confidence, because it is so powerful. It's been mind-blowing for me when I've stepped out and done things that I was terrified of doing. And so, you know, once you've done that yourself and worked with the clients, but initially borrowing some of David's, if you're reading his books, and then really honing on, okay, what is it that I can offer, and offering that with that confidence. So then you're less likely to offer a, you know, I'm going to say kind of a mediocre or a weak or unclear, you know, carrot or gentle ultimatum. Yeah. That help kind of clarify that, Scott. I'm glad you had that experience.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Zane, anyone else
Great.
you want to?
Yeah, we have one more comment from Bernie, who said he found the practice to be quite helpful, and that he was able to fine tune and learn some things. Perhaps we can hear from him and learn more about that.
That sounds great.
Hey there.
Hi, Bernie.
Hey, Bernie.
Pardon my crazy goggles. This is from eye surgery. How you doing?
You look like a rock star.
Yeah. You know, I give homework all the time to clients. But I also dangle the old carrots, you know, and I'd love to work with you. I think there's no reason you can't make terrific progress. I'm always saying to just about all my clients, the super resistant ones are a little harder to say that to, but I look for some area of to affirm them and to give them hope. But at any rate, I'm with all I do, this helped me to fine tune stuff that I was rusty on, like more carrots, a little more empathy on how difficult it is to step in and do these exercises, homework, exposure, just devoting time to therapy itself. And also expressing my appreciation of their choice if they choose not to work with me, with the hope that you'll come back. You know, if you want to see somebody else, I don't say it this way, but it comes across in some way. If you don't want to work with me, or this isn't working for you, I sure hope you'll change your mind. Call me anytime. I'm here for you. So anyway, that's just got me to thinking. All great stuff. Great workshop.
Thank you. I just appreciate that even with as much skill and experience and, you know, like all the skills and tools that you have, that you're still here wanting to learn and grow with us and feeling still like you are learning things from us. So that makes me really happy and really grateful that you're here.
Love that open hands at the end, Bernie, modeling that. Don't hesitate. Like, I mean, I'd love to work with you.
Yeah.
Right. Just give them full permission to walk away, but with that door wide open. It's great.
Okay, so I think we'll, if you have questions, remember, send them to Todd in the chat box to Todd, because we're gonna get to your questions in just a moment. But I am glad to have heard from some people about their breakout group experience. And so this is sort of really in tying things up, we're wanting to remind you, and really in everything you do in therapy all the time, but particularly what we're teaching you today, our goal is to help you to balance warmth, empathy, caring, kind of meeting the patient where they're at with holding them accountable. And I don't have a lot more to say than just throughout, from the moment that you meet the patient until the end of the patient, this is at least what I'm always trying to balance. And when I feel I've gone too far on the empathy side and I have no accountability and no structure, I have to remind myself, to pull back. And yet when you come across as harsh or demanding and non-caring, that's obviously not what we want to accomplish either.
Yeah, I know when we didn't, teach this today, but when we teach empathy training, we have what we call the 5 secrets of effective communication. And for me, the gentle ultimatum is often a form of the 5th one, the last one, which we would call affirmation or stroking. You're really affirming their agency to choose, as well as saying, I believe in you, by, setting kind of high expectations for them. If somebody said to me, what would you like? Would you like me to set really low expectations for you? Or would you like me to set high? I'll choose high every time, because then they're saying I believe in you. And so to me, it is a deeper form of empathy. It's that kind of 5th one. If you want to do a little extra work on empathy training, Jill's got some great courses, and you can do the core skills course, and you can learn all about it. But it's a good reminder for me that I'm infusing empathy when I'm doing that, in addition to dangling the carrot and saying I'm going to want to work with you, and that warmth. It's a form of connection and affirmation.
I was just thinking maybe what we'll do, actually, I have one idea, which is just because we just asked Zane for feedback and stuff. Maybe what I'm going to do is actually share with you some additional resources, and then I'm going to come back to the Q&A. So I'm not taking off the Q&A, but I'm saying I'm going to forward, and we're going to do the sort of additional where to go from here stuff, and then we're going to come back to Q&A, and then we'll drop the link in the chat so that you guys can do the CE survey. I just think the flow of that will actually work better. So we'll come back, and I don't mean come back, but we'll come back to this slide, and we'll ask you to share your questions with us, and we'll have time to answer your questions. First, we're just going to share a little bit about resources. Oftentimes we do this throughout the workshop, but Mike, you want to say something about this?
Yeah, for sure. We want people just to be aware of kind of what we're all about and what the opportunities are at the Feeling Good Institute. I often wake up and pinch myself that I get to be a part of such an incredible group of people. Jill and Maor and Angela are 3 of the key people who really started the Feeling Good Institute. And our passion, our goal is delivering great therapy and helping therapists to become the best they can be. And so there is treatment options at we call it FGI, Feeling Good Institute. You go to our website, there's video therapy all across Canada, the US. There's treatment centers in New York, Silicon Valley, and here in my hometown, and we still have one in Israel as well. And there's intensive therapy that's available. And then for training and certification, of course, all of you here have accessed this to get here, but there's additional, there's a lot of free, webinars available, as well as some live and on-demand training. LJ and I are teaching a course together right now. We're going to run another version of it in January, and Jill's got some asynchronous courses that you can jump into. And there's a children's, consultation groups, as well as training that we do here in the community. And so feel free to, dive into our website. There's also external trainings that are not actually FGI done, but there's a page there where you can look at what other people are doing. Angela Poach has got some great things going on. She's here today. And so encourage you to take advantage of that. And then, of course, our certification program. This is actually one of the reasons I really got connected with FGI. I've done a workshop with David, and he said, hey, Mike, there's this new certification program they're doing. And I think you might actually be a good candidate for it. He believed in me. He said, no, it's a lot of work. He dangled the carrot, and then he gave me a little gentle ultimatum. And said, but I think it would be great. And they just launched online, and I got connected with Jill and worked through the certification program. And I felt like I didn't really know anything, but such a warm, supportive community to be a part of. And the certification program gives you kind of milestones to work towards as you build your skill set. And then if you want to work towards being a trainer yourself, there's additional opportunities in training. So you can take the free home study crash course, by November the 12th, and then you can get your level 1 certification having done this. And for those that are already certified, you're accruing more credits toward your next level certification. So if you're level 1 already, then you can use these hours towards your level 2 and towards level 3.
And just to clarify what that is, you guys should see this on your on the workshop page. But if anyone is just taking this workshop, and this is our, today is a 4-hour workshop, but we do have this free asynchronous crash course in core skills that's on the workshop page that you can take and work through it. And there's quizzes, and then there's a test at the end, and you can actually get 5 CE credits for free for that. And once we see in about a month that you took that course and this course together, then we automatically will give you level 1 certification. One other free thing I want to tell you guys about, because you can go on our website and work, learn about all different trainings and stuff like that. But what we're doing now is the first Wednesday of every month, we're offering 1 hour free webinars. We're alternating a bunch. Sometimes they're didactic training for CE credit, and sometimes they're more like a flexible kind of Q&A so that you can get your questions answered. So the next one that's coming up next Wednesday, November 1st, is taught by Angela Crum for 1 credit, 1 CE credit, and it's CBT tools for rapid recovery from social anxiety. And it's great. I just watched Angela do a dress rehearsal, and it's really like chock full of information. I can't imagine how much you're going to learn in only an hour. So we hope you'll join us for that. It's easy, fun, free. And then actually, Mike and I want to share with you that we're launching a new course, and I'm just going to briefly talk about it, and then we'll move to our Q&A. But a lot of people have been trying to figure out how to move from like level 1 kind of beginner to level 3 certification. And we've created a hybrid course. So this is a course where there's brand new, not the core skills. There's 12 new hours of asynchronous home study training. And then at the same time, in order to give you the opportunity to actually practice what you're learning asynchronously, we have deliberate practice training groups that go along with the curriculum. So you kind of, watch the videos on your own, and then you join a practice group every week. And this is for 21 weeks, beginning in the beginning of January. Mike and Maor are the 2 people that are going to be leading those deliberate practice groups. And David and I have partnered to create the kind of didactic with interviews and role plays and things like that. So we'll follow up with an email that's going to give you a lot more information about it. You also get a free copy of Mike and Maor's brand new book, which they just finished. Maybe just tell them quickly what the book title is, and then if you guys want more info, just go to the Feeling Good Institute website. You can see like kind of a more information about the course. Just write down the code that's SAVE180 so that you can get this course for the launch price.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jill. A little shameless plug. I was telling Jill just yesterday, or what day is it today? Friday. Wednesday, I submitted the final proof of our book, and so it's due for production at the end of November, early December. It's available on Amazon right now. But if you take this course, then you'll get a copy, because it follows really the whole plan of the course, which describes the team model. It gives you exercises to do, as well as some learning through the reading, and an example of a live therapy session that pinpoints each of the skills all the way through at the end of it. And so we're pretty excited that it's ready to come out. It's called Deliberate Practice of Team CBT, and Maor Katz is the lead author, and he and I worked closely together with Alexander Vash and Tony Rumiere, who are real kind of leaders in the deliberate practice approach to learning how to become better therapists. We've incorporated the team model to it. So thanks, Jill.
Awesome. So yes, and we'll follow up with an email to you guys about this as well, just because it's exciting, and a lot of people will probably be interested in wanting to join it. So let's go ahead and answer questions now. In about 5 minutes, we'll also drop the CE survey link in the chat box. But so back to you, Todd, for any questions.
Yeah. Some awesome resources going on right now. Free, got new books. We got Fast Track to Level 3, and many great comments and questions. One from Indrani. She was, a lot of the themes about the fallback position. Andranis was specifically asking Mike, can Mike explain the third point on fallback position, where you pause and turn our attention to the barriers that interfere with homework?
Yeah, this is a good one. I was working with I'll give you a clinical example to maybe bring this to life. I was working with a young gentleman who had an ADHD diagnosis, and he really wanted help with, he was feeling really low self-esteem, depression, but he was struggling to get the homework done, and then also struggling to fill out the forms before and after each session. And so instead of saying, oh, no, you can't work with me, you got to work with somebody else, it seems like we've got some barriers in the way. And I have an ADD diagnosis as well, so I had a real hard heart for this guy. I tend to be distractible. And so I said to him, it seems like at the end of our session, when I ask you to fill out the form, for the after session survey, you say, yeah, I'll do that. And then you forget, or you can't get around to it. And I feel a little bit badly. I feel like I've been setting you up. And I'm wondering if we could just pause and see if we can figure out how we can overcome this challenge, because I want to continue to work with you, but I feel like I'm working blind when I don't know whether what we've been doing has been helping. And so we negotiated there, and we figured out, okay, you know what, at the end of our session, I take, 10 minutes to write some of my notes. And why don't you just stay online with me, and I'll be writing my notes, and you'll be filling out the form, and you can start that piece of the homework right now. And we'll be muted, but we'll be together. We'll just create a bit of that accountability. And it was such a relief to him, because he was feeling so guilty and ashamed every time. So it was just a creative way of going, okay, what's the barrier that's getting in the way of this particular requirement, right? So did that help answer that question, Johnny? Because it's a good one.
I think so. There was another one from Rich, and he says this is a sincere question, and he was asking about, where does being open to other approaches come into play with the fallback position? For example, there are a lot of newer cognitive functioning-based approaches being published recently for OCD when exposure fails or is refused.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like inference-based CBT for OCD, right? Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. I mean, my goal is to, kind of do no harm, and also to share any information that I think is valid with my patients. And so if it were the case that you thought that there was another treatment, or you're aware of another treatment that's effective that maybe you don't offer, and that would be a better fit for your patient, that seems to me like, yeah, that seems like a good idea to suggest it or recommend it. Or if a patient says, what about, I heard about this cognitive only treatment for OCD, it doesn't involve doing any exposure, what do you think about that? I would say it's your job to do a little research and find out about it. And if it's not something that you can offer, but something else that's out there, makes sense to me. So I do think you'll hear David Burns say, tools, not schools. And so I hope that we haven't sounded like, a tribe or a cult or something like that. I'm clear about what I have to offer, and I try to learn new tools and techniques too, and stay abreast of that. But if I think someone else has something to offer that's a better fit for a patient, I'd be really open to that. That feels right to me.
This one I often come up with relationship requests. People want help with their relationship, and I don't do couples in therapy. I work with individuals, using the team approach to help them figure out what they're needing to do. But I've done just enough training in emotionally focused couples therapy. There's a number of our therapists at FGI have offered that. I've got just enough training to know that I can't offer it, because I'm not skilled enough and haven't put in the work and the time and energy to learn it well. But I think it's a wonderful approach for people who want to do couples work. And so I might do it as a kind of adjunct. Potentially I could work with somebody in one area on their self-esteem or their mood regarding the relationship, and then refer to someone else who has more skill. And I think this is where I love what you just said, Jill. It's about knowing what is it that I can actually offer, and being clear about what I can, but also being humble enough to recognize that there may be some things that could be helpful that others offer. And we could potentially work collaboratively together, depending on the dynamic. They could be seeing another therapist for something else. And we're working in in concert. But I'm okay actually recognizing that I can't offer everything to everybody.
Yeah, that's a great point, though. We appreciate that. We put the link for the CE survey in the chat box. We'll answer another question or two. We have a few more minutes left, but we did want to make sure that everybody sees the link and that you can click on that link. You can leave your Zoom open. You can still be with us, but if you click on the link, you can be completing the CE survey now, so you can make sure that you get marked as attended. Any other questions for us, Todd?
Lots of questions, but maybe, like you said, one more question, or there's a comment also. Zane, actually, from the feedback from the small groups, I wasn't sure if the person wanted to add anything, but it was from Stan, who made a comment from the small group. My therapist used a twist in the fallback to increase my feeling of agency. And that felt like a teaser to me, like, oh, I was wanting to hear
what?
more.
Tell us.
I was like, what is that? Yeah. So I wasn't sure,
Please
Zane,
share.
if we wanted to add the Stan to our.
Yes, if Stan would like to be unmuted and share, maybe, I don't know, I'm not certain if, Zane, you can let us know if you see Stan and he wants to share what that was.
Yeah, what's the twist? We're always open to learning.
Yeah,
new.
I'm waiting with bated breath. I thought we had run out of time and couldn't take any more comments, but yeah, I wanted to invite Stan if he's feeling willing to share with us.
Yeah. And in the meantime, Todd, if you want, you can ask another question. We can do a speed
Absolutely.
round.
Yeah, so Scott, a little funny, my last name is Daly, and I have a brother named Scott Daly, but no relation to this Daly. So
well, it's funny, Todd, because I was going to ask if you guys were brothers, because I kind of think you guys look alike. So Scott, when Scott asked a question, I was like, hey, he looks a little bit like Todd.
I do have a brother named Scott, and I'm like, what the hell's my brother doing here? And then I'm like, oh, that's not Scott. But he was asking, Scott, can you say a bit more about how to avoid the slow degradation of accountability over multiple sessions?
Mm-hmm.
And actually, a few people brought that theme up, but I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, this is
I guess we just, yeah, I mean, well, I would just say that I would recognize that that's real. I think of it as drift, sort of therapist drift. I mean, it's even after we learn new skills, like I'm thinking you guys are going to be like super accountable next week. And then maybe, slowly but surely. I mean, honestly, what I would say is the best way that I stay sharp and on track as a therapist with each of my patients is, for me, it's teaching, but it used to be going to training groups, right? Like being around and practicing these tools reminds you of how important they are and what I need to do. But your patients will naturally become less and less accountable unless you have processes in place. So I always check in with my patients about homework at the outset of every session. And that actually really helps us to make sure that they're doing their homework and to course correct if needed. And it also kind of sets the stage for the rest of the whole session, because it kind of like, we're going to talk about what they worked on and presumably build on it, today in session. So having what, like, placeholders, or I don't know what you would call them, bookmarks, if we will, in your therapy flow can be really helpful. Did you have something else to add real quick, Mike?
Yeah, no, exactly. I was just thinking my bookmark is looking at what their answer to the miracle cure question was. What was the goal of therapy? If I read that before the session, then I'm like, okay, are we on track here? Or are we are we drifting away? And then the homework then leads, checking in the homework leads to that. But that's just a mental thing for me. I go, okay, what was our goal? What were we actually hoping for in therapy? And then I can check in with them to see whether they want that refined or whether we're on track with it or not. And that's where the homework really helps with that.
And just remember that it's never too late. So let's just imagine you've just totally drifted and you've entered into sort of an empathy only type of therapy. Well, you can always say, I've been thinking about the work that we've been doing together, and I've realized that I've, we've drifted from some of the goals that you initially had when you came in to see me. And I wonder if we can check in again and try to remember what it is you came here for, or what it is we need to be working on. I mean, it's never too late to course correct. So we're going to let you go on time. So we're going to end by just saying thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate all of your participation and questions and feedback and things like that. We also want to say a really big thank you to all the helpers in the breakout groups. We couldn't have made this a lively and interactive and engaged training without the help of all of you, and help also to all the people who were on that slide that were helping behind the scenes, LJ and Todd and Zane and Daniel. And thanks to Mike. I really loved teaching with you today.
Well, I'm right back at you, Jill. A huge thanks to you. You've been sort of a mentor and inspiration for me on how to teach well over the years, and to have this opportunity is such a gift. And you know, the behind the scenes, Jill carries the load, right? And we collaborate a lot together, but I just am continuing to be grateful to have the opportunity to work together with you. And thank you to LJ, who stepped into the role that I was doing for all these years and did it masterfully. Thanks, LJ, for your leadership.
So please make sure, LJ put that link in the chat. Make sure you look in the chat right now and grab the Google form and go ahead and fill out your CE survey. And then we'll be in touch with you guys. We'll follow up with you with an email just to let you know about some future trainings. And we hope that we get to see you again in one of our free sessions or another workshop in the future. So thanks, everybody.